I was sidelined by my family's favoritism toward my adopted sister until her shocking true identity was revealed at my birthday party. Family trouble has plagued me, 35F, for as long as I can remember, but recent events have now gotten to the breaking point. I feel like I'm drowning in hurt, uncertainty and hatred right now, so I'm hoping anyone who has experienced a similar circumstance may offer some guidance or insight. To put things in perspective, my adopted sister, 34F, is just 1 year younger than myself. She was adopted by our parents when she was a newborn, and I have spent my entire childhood with her. That would seem to bring us together, like a couple, but the truth is far from that romantic notion. It was evident from my very first recollections that our parents gave preference to my sister. They lavished her with attention, gave her everything she desired, and appeared to listen intently to everything she said. When I proudly showed my mother a sketch I had done when I was 5 years old, she dismissed me since my sister was reciting the alphabet for the 100th time. Although it might not seem like much, it was a sign of a pattern that would shape our family's dynamics for many years to come. The distance between us just got wider as we got older. My sister had trouble reading in elementary school, and our parents worked with her for hours every night. Even though I did exceptionally well in school, I seldom ever got more than a passing good job on my report cards. My sister had a dance recital in middle school, so my parents were not there at the award ceremony when I won the scientific fair. That was always the case. Her wants, accomplishments, and hardships all came before mine. I don't want to imply that I was abused or neglected in the conventional sense. Our fundamental necessities were always satisfied, including having a roof over our heads and food on the table. However, the emotional neglect was genuine and extremely distressing. Early on, I discovered that being flawless, achieving, excelling, was the only way to garner any attention in our home. So I did just that. With an almost obsessive zeal, I immersed myself into my studies. In high school, I was cooped up in my room preparing for AP exams and filling out my college applications while my sister was out at parties and hanging out with friends. It was worthwhile. I received a half scholarship to a prestigious university. This will finally make my parents proud, I thought. However, instead of applauding my accomplishment on the day I departed for college, they fussed more about how my sister would handle my absence. College was enlightening. I was evaluated entirely on my own merits, not in relation to my sister, for the first time in my life. I made true friends who appreciated me for who I was, and I flourished both socially and academically. I obtained a position at a prominent company after graduating with honors. With unwavering resolve, I ascended the corporate ladder during the ensuing 10 years. My inner voice, which still yearned for my parents' praise, propelled me to every advancement and accomplishment. I'm pleased of what I've accomplished and currently work for a Fortune 500 firm in a senior management role. However, that pride is constantly laced with resentment because my family never seems to be satisfied with whatever I achieve. In contrast, my sister has never truly settled into a profession and has alternated between jobs. She still resides with our parents, who provide her with both emotional and financial support. My parents may have been pleased by my accomplishment, but it appears that it has just strengthened their partiality for my sister. They constantly offer justifications for her lack of focus, such as, she's just trying to find her passion. Or not everyone needs to climb the corporate ladder to be happy. At the same time, if my achievements are recognized at all, they are frequently greeted with a lackluster congrat. Our family relationships have been damaged in every way because of this dynamic. Family get-togethers are a minefield of barely veiled bitterness and passive-aggressive remarks. I've made an effort to discuss my feelings with my parents, but they consistently brush them off as envious or too sensitive. As for my sister, she seems to take great pride in her preferred position and frequently makes disparaging comments about me being married to my job or too busy for family. I've been in therapy for years in an attempt to resolve these problems, boost my self-esteem, and establish sound boundaries. But every encounter with my family seems to set me back, regardless of how much progress I made. I've thought of severing all connections, but it would be devastating to lose my family, dysfunctional as they are. This leads me to last week's events, which have caused me to reevaluate every aspect of my relationships with my family. As is customary, our parents threw my sister a lavish birthday celebration. Friends, extended family, and even some of her former classmates were invited. With catered food, an open bar, and even a live band, the house was decorated as though it were a wedding ceremony. As a comparison, last month's birthday was celebrated with a little dinner for the four of us, during which the most of the discussion focused on my sister's most recent business venture, a pet-related social media app that she believes will be the next big thing. After approximately 2 minutes, my parents' eyes drifted away as I attempted to discuss a significant project I'm overseeing at work. I made an effort to blend in at the party. I tried my best to encourage my sister on her special day by interacting with family members in a courteous manner and striking up little conversations. However, as the evening went on, I sensed the old bitterness rising within me. It wasn't just the extravagant celebration. It was also the way our parents showered her with praise, how family members inquired about her life while hardly noticing mine, and how she absorbed all the attention as if it were her natural inheritance. In an attempt to calm the anxiety attack I could see coming on, I found myself withdrawing to a corner and drinking a glass of wine. When she saw how upset I was, a cousin came to see how I was doing. With sincere concern in her voice, she inquired, "Are you okay?" For the first time that evening, someone had taken the effort to inquire about my well-being. I started to reply, but my sister's voice broke through the throng before I could. She raised her voice and tapped her glass with a spoon, saying, "Attention everyone. I'd like to make a toast." As everyone's attention was drawn to my sister, the room became quiet. She was a little shaky on her feet, and her cheeks were flushed, which indicated that she had consumed a significant amount of alcohol. As she began her address, she was still able to put on a convincing smile. Initially, it appeared to be a standard birthday greeting. She toasted our parents for their love and support, thanked everyone for attending, and conveyed her appreciation for the celebration. Her tone then shifted and I got a shiver down my back. She said, "I'm especially grateful to Mom and Dad," with a tone of voice that I had never heard before. "I've always received greater treatment from them than their own daughter. Just take a peek at this celebration. When was the last time they threw my sister a party like this?" As everyone in the room turned to stare at me, I felt my face heat up. But my sister wasn't finished. "But I guess that's because I've always been the better daughter," she added, sounding a little slurred by the champagne. "Yes, my sister has a nice career and makes a lot of money, but who do Mom and Dad truly love in the end? Who makes their life happier? It's not the icy, work-driven automaton who hardly has time for family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing and was still. With the exception of a few painful coughs and my sister's voice, which seemed to get louder by the second, the room had become eerily quiet. She said, "You know, it's funny," with a tiny wobble. Everyone constantly praised my sister's intelligence and her potential for success, but look at us now. I'm here with family and friends who genuinely care about me, while she's by herself, married to her job. I turned to our parents in the hopes that they would intervene and put an end to this vicious act. However, they only sat there, appearing uneasy and doing nothing to stop it. I had never felt more alone in my life than I did at that precise time. My sister continued to babble, criticizing every element of my life, including my appearance, the fact that I didn't have a romantic partner, and even the suggestion that I succeeded in my work by sleeping my way to the top. I felt myself getting smaller with every word, years of repressed hurt and rage threatening to blow up. My aunt, our mother's sister, stepped up just as I was about to burst into tears and thought I could take no more. She had a determined and angry expression on her face. I was standing when she approached and gave me an envelope. Her voice broke the tension in the room as she stated, "Don't open this until I'm done talking." Her eyes were flaming as she turned to face the throng. The scene that followed resembled a scene from a soap opera. According to my aunt, my sister wasn't taken from a foster home. She was her biological daughter. It seems that my aunt wasn't prepared to become a mother when she became pregnant suddenly in her early 20s. She requested my parents to adopt the child instead of ending the pregnancy. My aunt continued, "I thought I was doing the right thing," her voice trembling with passion. "I believed that my sister and her husband would provide a better life for my child. I believed she would develop into a nice, caring person who was appreciative of her life. However, instead, she turned to face my sister, who had turned completely white. Instead, you've developed into a conceited, self-centered brat who believes it's acceptable to make fun of her sister in public. I've watched this familial dynamic unfold for years, and I can no longer keep quiet about it." Chaos broke out in the room. Screaming, my sister demanded to know whether it was true. Our parents were shooting daggers at my aunt while attempting to soothe her. Family members were pointing and muttering. And me? I felt as though the earth had vanished from beneath me as I stood there, gripping the envelope. Once more, my aunt's voice broke through the cacophony. My aunt expressed her dismay, saying, "I always thought that if my daughter was being raised by my sister, she would grow up to be a wonderful person. But obviously, I was mistaken. No good person would ever attempt to make their sister look as bad as you just did." Then, turning to face me, she instructed me to open the packet. There was a blank check inside. My aunt told me to fill in whatever amount you want. I had planned to give this to her as a birthday gift, but after seeing how she's turned out, I have no interest in rewarding that behavior. My aunt then left, leaving a startled quiet behind her. It was short-lived. In an attempt to take the check out of my hands, my sister lunged at me. She was so hysterical that our parents had to physically restrain her as she shouted and sobbed. It was more than I could handle. I fled to my room, shut the door, and sobbed. Years of suppressing my hurt and bitterness and feeling inferior came rushing out. I ignored the banging on my door and the muted arguments coming from downstairs while I sobbed for hours. A week has passed, and I'm still unsure about what to do. With the exception of needs, I have not left my room. Despite our parents' attempts to speak with me, I find it difficult to confront them. My sister has alternated between begging for forgiveness, and the check of course, and sending me angry messages. There's a part of me that wants to cash that check, go and never return. I've tried all my life to win the love and acceptance of people who don't seem to be able to give it to me. Perhaps I should give up trying. Perhaps it's time for me to prioritize myself. However, I also have a fear of losing my family. Despite their dysfunction, they are the only family I have ever known. It's terrifying to consider living without them, going on vacation by yourself, and having no one to call in case of an emergency. In addition, I'm experiencing a lot of mixed feelings regarding my sister. On the one hand, I'm upset with her for her actions during the party and for years of subtly insulting people. However, I can't help but feel a little sorry for them. It must be really upsetting to learn that you're adopted, especially in such a humiliating and public manner. Does that justify her actions? Not at all. However, it makes matters more difficult. Regarding my parents, I find it hard to comprehend how they could have watched while my sister sobbed at me. Were they simply taken aback? Or does their lack of response reveal their true feelings for me? Years of emotional neglect and favoritism, how can I even start? I feel as though I'm at a fork in the road and am unsure of which way to go. Should I make an effort to repair these damaged relationships? Can something wholesome be constructed from such a poisonous base? Or do I go on and attempt to start over, one in which I'm not always looking for unfulfilled approval? Reddit, I'm lost. I've tried my entire life to gain the love and acceptance of my family, only to be rejected and humiliated in the process. From here, how do I proceed? Should I accept that certain families cannot be repaired, or is there any chance for reconciliation? Any insight or counsel would be greatly valued. I feel as though I'm drowning in hurt and confusion, and I'm no longer sure which way is up. First update. 2 days have passed since the terrible birthday celebration, and I'm still getting over it all. My aunt came to visit me this morning. As she continued to discuss the adoption, she appeared worn out. When she became pregnant, she was young and afraid. It seemed like the ideal option for my parents, who had been trying for another child. To keep everyone safe, they decided to keep it a secret. For years, she had been accumulating money with the intention of transferring it to my sister when she was ready to be self-sufficient. She came to the realization that I was more deserving after the party. She gave me an empty check. I felt both guilty for stealing something intended for my sister and justified that someone recognized the unfair treatment. Despite my attempts to decline, my aunt persisted, claiming it was back pay for emotional labor. That evening, I decided something. I checked into a hotel across town, packed my luggage, and left my folks a note. I needed time to reflect. I ignored the calls and messages from my relatives throughout the course of the following several days. I performed some introspection, talked to my therapist, and sought advice from a financial advisor regarding the check. I sent my folks an email 5 days later. I assured them I needed time but was secure. I laid up my requirements for mending our relationship. They had to admit to the years of partiality. All of us go to family therapy. My sister apologizes in public. They start treating us equally and cease condoning her actions. They instantly responded that they were relieved and asked me to come home so we could discuss. We decided to get together at a cafe close to my hotel. It was a stressful encounter. My parents agreed to treatment and pledged to improve our ties, as if they were sorry. They expressed reluctance to publicly apologize for my sister's adoption, claiming it was traumatic. I refused to back down and insisted that she issue a public apology for her actions. With an uneasy truce we departed. Everything but the public apology was approved by my parents, who indicated they would talk to my sister about it. Over the following few days, the negotiations went on. At first, my sister sent irate messages and refused to apologize. But as I persisted, her tone started to shift. She apologized via text, saying she was unhappy and intoxicated at the party. I retorted that the apology should not only be for the party event but also for years of nasty behavior. More irate texts followed, and then there was stillness. My parents attempted to mediate the situation by offering solutions like a written statement or an apology limited to the family. I was conflicted as this went on. There was a part of me that wanted to be forceful and insist on the respect I so well earned. Another part wondered if fighting was worth it because it was so exhausting. I was reminded by my therapist that putting my health first is not selfish. Setting boundaries, she stated, is necessary for healthy relationships. I've made the decision to offer my family one final opportunity to comply with my demands. I'll use my aunt's check to start over somewhere else, away from family strife and past hurts, if they are unable to. I'm feeling both nervous and optimistic as I get ready to give this order. Whatever occurs will influence my life and relationships in the future. I'm hoping I'm making the correct decision. I will update you. I appreciate everyone's support. Knowing that I'm not fighting this battle alone is reassuring. Second update. Since my last update, which was a week ago, things have drastically changed. I've made the decision to revoke the terms I established for reconciliation, but not for the reasons you may expect. After arguing with my family for days, I came to the conclusion that their attempts at compromise were more about minimizing the harm than showing sincere regret. Increasingly manipulative, my sister's apology texts alternated between gaslighting and guilt tripping. "You're tearing this family apart," she'd write, and then, "I don't even remember what I said at the party. Are you sure you're not exaggerating?" In the meantime, my parents persisted in trying to reach a solution that seemed to ignore the true problems rather than deal with them. They objected to the concept of admitting their part in creating this unhealthy relationship and instead proposed a private family gathering where my sister would provide an apology. I started to lose sleep, check my phone frequently, and get nervous whenever it buzzed as the pressure increased. It became evident that my mental health was suffering as a result of this negotiation. At that point, I decided to remove my conditions, not because I believe they are irrational, but rather because I now understand that meaningful change cannot be coerced or negotiated. My family just isn't there yet, and it must originate internally. I wrote my parents a quick email. "I'm rescinding my previous conditions. I need space and time to heal. Please respect my wishes and don't contact me for a while." They reacted with astounding speed. The volume of calls, texts, and voicemails on my phone surged. I had to ask security to take them out of my office once they arrived. They also reached out to a few of my pals in an attempt to persuade me to return home. "We love you, please come home. How can you do this to us? And your sister is devastated. She's not eating," were among the desperate, angry, and manipulative texts they sent. Emotional warfare has been going on nonstop. Sometimes the guilt is unbearable. Sometimes I question whether I'm exaggerating or whether I should just go home and try to forget everything. However, I also recall the years I spent feeling invisible, having my accomplishments disregarded, and seeing my sister consistently given preference. To assist me deal with the stress, I've started going to my therapist twice a week. By barring my family's phone numbers and configuring email filters, she has been assisting me in establishing boundaries. Although it seems drastic, it's essential for my mental health at the moment. My workplace has turned into a haven for me. To avoid returning to my empty flat, I've poured myself into tasks and stayed late at work. Some of my coworkers have expressed concern after noticing the difference in me. Even if I can't adequately describe the circumstances, I appreciate their support. I still haven't paid my aunt's check though. As a continual reminder of the decision I must make, it rests in my desk drawer. To show that I don't need their money or approval, I feel like tearing it up. Some view it as a lifeline, an opportunity to start over somewhere new. I've begun looking at employment prospects in other cities and even other nations. It is both exciting and frightening to consider a whole transformation. Was it truly possible for me to start afresh and leave everything behind? I'm taking things day by day for the time being. I'm getting better at accepting the unease that comes with uncertainty and having faith that I'll know what to do when the time comes. Certain days are more difficult than others. Sometimes I miss my family so terribly that it hurts my body. However, there are also unexpectedly peaceful moments when I notice that my breathing is easier than it has been in years. I am aware that this voyage is far from finished. There will be more emotional obstacles to conquer and more challenging choices to make. But I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. It feels right, but it's also unpleasant and uncomfortable. I appreciate all of your ongoing help and guidance. Having this place to process and share is more important than you may realize. When I have more to report, I'll provide another update. I'm concentrating on getting better and finding my identity outside of my family's shadow in the interim. Third update. 3 weeks have passed since my last report, and things have significantly worsened. When my sister unexpectedly showed up at the door last Saturday when we were visiting my aunt, we were taken aback. She stormed in, obviously drunk and furious, yelling, "You've ruined everything. You are attempting to take my life after stealing my mother." The stench of alcohol was overpowering, and her eyes were crazy. My aunt and I had to hold her back as she lunged at me. Allegations were made by my sister, who said I had always been envious and had turned everyone against her. Even after everything that had transpired, the hatred in her voice was startling. I was shocked by my aunt's response. Her normally composed manner had vanished. "You need to leave now," she said forcefully, her face hardening as she dragged my sister out of the house. My sister resumed her tirade outside, attracting neighbors' attention. "My mother is not you," I heard her shout at my aunt. "I was exposed to you. You can no longer act as though you care." A few of the neighbors threatened to contact law enforcement. My sister eventually pulled away in her automobile. My aunt was clearly shaken within. She revealed that she struggled with guilt over the adoption during our hours-long conversation. She had believed that telling the truth would fix things, but she now understood that the harm was much more extensive. "I believed I was acting appropriately," she muttered. "However, I might have just made things messy for everyone. Wide-ranging effects have resulted from the occurrence." Later, my parents called in a rage, accusing me of trying to ruin our family and inciting my aunt against my sister. I tried to explain things to them, but they refused. Members of the extended family have taken sides, causing the family to become severely divided. What started out as a private issue has turned into a full-fledged family conflict. The intensity of it all overwhelms me. I feel guilty even though I know it's not my fault, but I also want to withdraw and start over somewhere else. Because of my sister's condition, my aunt is worried about my safety and has proposed that I remain with her for a bit. I'm thinking about it, but I'm afraid it could make things worse. I'm making an effort to remain somewhat normal throughout this whole ordeal. I try to look after myself, go to work and see my therapist. However, this familial conflict is a continual burden. I wonder if this will have any repercussions. Is it possible for a family to overcome such ingrained animosity and rage? Is it better to give up or is it worth trying? I'm trying to avoid getting pulled back into the pandemonium and am concentrating on my own recovery for the time being. Even though it's difficult, I'm committed to finding a solution, whether or not my family is on board. I appreciate your unwavering support, everyone. You don't realize how much it matters. When I can, I'll provide another update, ideally with more positive news. Update 4. A month has passed since my last update, and I've made some decisions that will change my life. I came to the realization that I needed to take immediate action to safeguard my mental health and create a future for myself following the tumultuous incident with my sister at my aunt's place. I've poured myself fully into my profession, asking my supervisor if I may move to another location to work for our company or take on more responsibility. I was surprised by how supportive she was. I'm currently in the running for a senior management job that would take me across the nation. It's thrilling as well as frightening. Along with the opportunity to oversee a large project, the new position offers a substantial wage increase. To get ready for this change, I've been working 12-hour days, going to every training session I can, and networking frantically. My increased zeal has sparked curiosity among my coworkers, but I've been able to sidestep most inquiries. A few close coworkers are well aware of my predicament and have been tremendously helpful. Regarding the money part, I ultimately decided on my aunt's check. I made the decision to cash it after giving it a lot of thought and spoke with a financial advisor. I was able to reframe it as an investment in my future, one free from toxic family dynamics, with the assistance of my therapist. I've secured an apartment in my prospective city using a portion of the funds. With a view of the city skyline, it's a compact, contemporary space. I've put the remainder into a diversified portfolio. I feel autonomous and financially secure for the first time in my life. The final separation from my family has been the most difficult aspect. All of their phone numbers and email addresses have been blocked by me. I've requested that my aunt not forward any of their texts. I know it's essential for my recovery, but it's been excruciating, like cutting off a piece of myself. Of course, there are periods of uncertainty. I occasionally feel inclined to phone late at night in an attempt to make amends. However, I then recall the years of gaslighting, the ongoing sense of inferiority, and the violent altercation at my aunt's house. It makes me more determined to keep going. I recently began seeing a new therapist who focuses on estrangement and familial trauma. She has been assisting me in overcoming my sadness and guilt. To replace the family-centered customs I've left behind, we're concentrating on establishing a new network of support and developing new ones. Additionally, I've joined a support group for those who are separated from their relatives. It has been both upsetting and consoling to hear their stories. I've learned that I'm not the only one going through this and that you can have a happy life without the family you were born into. Regarding my aunt, We have kept up our friendship while setting clear limits. She doesn't try to act as a mediator and accepts my decision to break off contact with the rest of the family. Although her assistance has been priceless, I'm careful not to rely on her too much. I feel a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension about the future. Though intimidating, the idea of starting over in a new place with a demanding new job and no family safety net is also freeing. I feel for the first time that I am living my life according to my own terms, free from societal norms and familial expectations. I've begun pursuing new interests and pastimes that I never had time for while I was preoccupied with family matters. I've joined a local hiking group, I'm learning how to cook, and I'm even thinking about painting. I've not felt this at peace in years as I pack up my flat and get ready for this new phase. Yes, I am saddened by what I have lost, but I am also hopeful about the future. I'm no longer the neglected kid or the family's scapegoat. I am only me, paving my own way. I want to thank everyone for their support along this journey. You have no idea how much your words of support have meant. My last update will be this one. I should put this chapter behind me and concentrate on writing the next one. Good luck to me. Sister pushes pregnant me down the stairs as a prank. Parents threaten to disinherit me for pressing charges. I ended up in the hospital after my sister shoved me down the stairs during her party, claiming it was a harmless joke. My parents are now threatening to take away my inheritance if I file a complaint. I am 4 months pregnant at the moment, 28F. For the past 2 years, Newton, my spouse and I have been attempting to conceive. To be honest, there were times when we thought we might not make it. The wait seemed to go on forever. Then, somewhat unexpectedly, we learned what I was expecting. Given all of the challenges we've faced thus far, this pregnancy holds immense significance for us. The fact that we will soon be welcoming our first child into the world makes us incredibly happy. Newton and I decided to be extra careful this time because I've had miscarriages in the past. We made the decision to conceal the pregnancy until we were positive that everything was going according to plan in order to protect our emotional health. If for whatever reason, we also lost this pregnancy, we wanted to shield ourselves from the extra pain of having to grieve in public. My younger sister Elle, and my parents were unaware of my pregnancy until last week. At times, it seemed weird to keep them in the dark, but I also needed the time to think things through. From significant life events to minor triumphs, my family has always been the kind to celebrate everything. To be honest, I adore that quality about them. We've created a ton of wonderful memories together throughout the years, and it adds a special touch to every occasion. But when it comes to going to family gatherings, I've been a little aloof for the last 4 months. Given how emotionally taxing the pregnancy was, I simply needed more time for me. However, my younger sister Elle was ecstatic when she received a promotion at work last week. Last year, Elle's ideal wedding was meant to take place, but at the last minute, everything went wrong. Her ex cheated on her with one of his co-workers at his bachelor party the night before the wedding. The groom didn't even have the grace to show up and speak to Elle on the day of the wedding. Rather, one of his buddies arrived to break the heartbreaking news that he had made the decision to completely cancel his participation in the wedding. The entire scenario was really embarrassing, and our entire family was startled. It was meant to be one of the most joyful days of her life, and we had spent a lot of time getting ready for it. Elle was heartbroken. All of her hopes and excitement for her future with this man had been dashed in such a public and harsh manner. Elle immersed herself into her career after that. She used it as a coping mechanism to keep herself occupied and diverted from the pain. Although she has always been driven and ambitious, her commitment to her work increased significantly following the wedding disaster. Therefore, her recent promotion marked a significant turning point in her career and personal life. She virtually pleaded with me to come since she wanted to celebrate the occasion with a party. I could tell she truly missed having me around when she said she hadn't seen me in a long time. Additionally, I was being urged to attend by my parents, who kept urging me to do so and expressing how much it would mean to her. Given that I hadn't attended the last few family get-togethers, I really didn't want to let her down. I therefore at last consented. However, I didn't want to detract from Elle's accomplishment on her special night by being obviously pregnant and taking away the emphasis. The last thing I wanted was that. I didn't want to detract from her moment. I wanted her to experience it. But it was becoming more and more difficult to conceal as the baby bump grew. For one night though, I believed I could handle it. In order to hide my tummy, I wore a long flowing dress. I even went so far as to apply shapewear to reduce the bump as much as possible. I was determined to keep Elle and her promotion front and center. Everything appeared to be proceeding as planned when I arrived at Elle's party. I felt a little more at ease knowing that my attempts to conceal my pregnancy were successful because no one had any suspicions. When my mother saw that my arms and cheeks appeared somewhat plumper than normal, she did say anything. However, I had already considered how to respond to such circumstances, so I swiftly responded with a joke that I had simply been eating a lot lately. To be honest, I was relieved that they were less likely to detect the truth about my pregnancy and more likely to believe that I was simply putting on weight. For now, that seemed like the safer course of action. As the evening wore on, I became more and more aware of how uncomfortable I was. The celebration seemed to go on forever, and I'm not used to staying up late anymore. Newton, my husband, arrived at the party right from work and was enjoying himself. I was grateful that he continued to periodically check in with me to make sure I was doing okay. Elle and the rest of my family were having a great time in the meantime. They were having a great time dancing in the backyard and doing shots. Seeing Elle so joyful and carefree, especially after everything she's been through, made me glad. However, I began to feel nauseous, most likely due to the heat of the evening and all the greasy food. I slipped inside and found a peaceful seat on the couch after deciding I needed to escape the boisterous dancing and loud music. At that moment, my only true desire was to get home, raise my feet, possibly massage my legs, get into bed and read on my Kindle for a little while. I briefly closed my eyes in an attempt to relax and collect myself. My Aunt Mia sat down beside me at that moment, waking me up. I had fallen asleep without even realizing it. Without providing a reason, I shook my head when she offered me a glass of wine. She went on to say that I looked pregnant and that my face was nearly glowing the entire evening. I froze, unsure of how to respond. Aunt Mia is no fool, so I tried to shrug it off, avoiding eye contact and feeling uncomfortable. She asked me directly, "Are you really pregnant?" as her eyes widened in shock. Despite my inner panic, I made an effort to remain calm. In an attempt to divert her attention, I shook my head, but Aunt Mia put her hands on my stomach and her eyes brightened with total conviction. "Oh my God, darling, you are pregnant," she cried. She chuckled and drew me into an embrace. I was a little alarmed and practically begged her not to tell anyone just yet because I didn't think the time was perfect to make the announcement. However, Aunt Mia dismissed my worries. She reminded me that everyone had been eagerly anticipating this time, hoping that I would become pregnant, and demanded that the family should be informed of this wonderful news. Aunt Mia smiled at me, held my face in her hands, and reminded me that it was a family night even though I told her it was Elle's night. She told me not to overthink it and that because everyone had come together it was the ideal moment to share. Everyone was still dancing and partying when Aunt Mia got up and went outside before I could stop her. As I saw her, my heart fell. Aunt Mia captured everyone's interest with all the zeal in the world. Without wasting a beat, she pointed at me and told everyone that I was pregnant after telling them she had some important news to deliver. There was a moment of stillness while everyone processed Aunt Mia's words. Then everyone in the party burst out. My relatives hurried over to me, around me with congratulations, shouts and hugs. They were ecstatic, giving me a tight hug while crying and expressing their excitement for Newton and me. They were naturally thrilled to hear the news because they were all aware of my past miscarriages. My parents were so emotional that they were crying. In celebration of this new chapter in our lives, many congratulated Newton and gave him hugs as well. I definitely didn't want to reveal my pregnancy in this way. I had imagined a more private, intimate event, something modest and unique, something I could share with my family when I was ready. At a gathering that was supposed to be all about Elle, I had instead been dragged into the spotlight. I saw her standing off to the side at that point, smiling as best she could but obviously feeling uncomfortable. She avoided making eye contact with me and wasn't participating in the festivities. I was overcome with remorse because I had worked so hard to stay out of situations like these. I approached her and apologized for Aunt Mia's disclosure of my pregnancy. Elle inhaled deeply and inquired as to why I hadn't before disclosed my pregnancy. I clarified that I had intended to make the announcement a few weeks later, when I was more at ease and prepared to do so. She pursed her lips, shook her head and murmured, "Whatever. I suppose your request was granted." I was surprised by her response, and her comments hurt. I attempted to reason with her, but Elle didn't seem interested in having a conversation. She moved away after taking a sip of her wine and stopped focusing on me. Overwhelming advice from friends and family on being a first-time parent consumed the remainder of the evening. Everyone appeared excited to share their experiences and advice. Elle, meantime, continued to glare at me from the other side of the room as though I was somehow to blame for everything. I felt much more guilty and uneasy after her response. I had an overwhelming want to go to the bathroom at one point. I stood up and went to the guest bathroom, but it was completely packed. I went upstairs to use the restroom in the main bedroom because I felt like my bladder was going to explode. I went to the bathroom to relieve myself, and when I came out, Elle was waiting for me outside. She appeared inebriated. Sensing the awkwardness between us, I tried to apologize again with an awkward smile. Elle didn't appear to get any softer. Rather, she simply rolled her eyes and inquired, "Are you truly expecting?" There was a hint of suspicion in her voice, and her tone was almost contemptuous. "Of course I am," I said, looking at her while reflexively touching my tummy. Why would I tell a falsehood? Went on to add that everything was extremely strange, particularly since I hadn't even told our mother, with whom I often spoke daily, that I was pregnant. I was becoming annoyed by her incessant interrogation. I attempted to reiterate my justifications in the hopes that she would realize that I had made the decision to keep it a secret. I was shocked by Elle's insensitivity when she said, in a callous tone that pierced my heart, "Maybe this pregnancy will also end in miscarriage, just like your previous ones." How could she have said such a disgusting thing about my child? I screamed at her, my voice shaking with fury and hurt. "How dare you say such a thing? Even though I've apologized multiple times tonight, your remarks were inappropriate." My voice reverberated in exasperation. Elle retorted that she was upset that I had taken away her attention, particularly considering everything that had happened to her the previous year. I made an effort to remind her that I had supported her through her sadness, staying at her house for several nights and assisting her in getting over her groom's abandonment. I assured her that I would never purposefully overshadow her and that she should blame Aunt Mia for outing me without my permission if she was upset about the outcome. But Elle kept pointing the finger at me. I felt it would be better to leave and head back downstairs because I was so exhausted and tired of the debate. In the hopes that Elle would settle down and we could talk about it later, I needed some time and space to think things through. Elle, who was right behind me, kept calling me a selfish person and stating that I should have just given her a night alone. I chose to ignore her, but just as I was about to head downstairs, I felt a strong shove from behind. As I slipped and struggled to regain my footing, my eyes widened in shock. In an attempt to save myself from falling, I was able to grab the railing, but my knees gave way under the combined force of my own weight and speed. I ended myself sliding headfirst down the steps after losing my footing. My instincts took control in an instant. Desperate to protect my baby from the impact, I covered my stomach with my hands. My wrists felt the entire force of my fall as my body crashed down the stairs. It was a nasty fall. A quick, searing pain shot through my hands, and I heard an explosive shatter. The agony was sudden and intense. I lay collapsed on the stairs and screamed in pain. As I struggled with the unbearable pain in my wrists, my surroundings became hazy, but my top priorities were my son and if the fall had hurt him in any way. The rest of the family soon saw the chaos caused by my fall and my calls for assistance. With worried and alarmed expressions on their faces, they hurried over in a frenzy. Chaos broke out in the room as everyone sought to comprehend what had just transpired. Newton, my husband, grabbed me up right away and carried me downstairs. I continued saying that Elle had shoved me down the stairs since I was in so much pain. Everyone appeared astonished. Everyone's attention was drawn to Elle, who stood behind me, silent and with a guilty expression. She was confronted by my husband, who yelled at her for pushing a pregnant woman down the stairs. Clearly upset, my mother hurried up to Elle, shaking her shoulders and asking if she had indeed shoved me. Elle cried and nodded in agreement, her face hot and distraught. My mother was deeply affected by the realization. Elle then started crying excessively while embracing my mother and accusing her of being intoxicated and acting recklessly. I was in so much pain and shock that I was beginning to pass out. I could hear Newton frantically phoning 911 to summon an ambulance through the fog. I could just make out the worried faces around me as my vision became blurry. After then, everything was a haze of sirens, chaos, and frenzied activity. I ended up in a hospital room when I eventually came to. Newton appeared worn out as he slept in a chair next to my bed. My throat was dry and parched, so I gently woke him up and asked for some water. I asked him what had transpired following the fall as he assisted me in drinking the water. Newton described how the pain had caused me to lose consciousness and how I had needed emergency care for wrist fractures. I would have to wear the cast the doctors had put on me for the next 4 to 6 weeks while my bones healed. I then inquired about the baby. Newton told me that our child was safe after the physician's examination. I felt a wave of relief. Knowing that our baby will be all right made me happy. The anarchy that had developed following the disaster was then explained to me by Newton. Elle's family was so upset with her that they attempted to have her arrested. But the cops had only been able to get statements from the witnesses because I was unconscious. Before they could file any charges, they still needed my formal statement. Newton grasped my hands and emphasized the need for me to report my sister's behavior and put aside my feelings for her. He was adamant, saying that, considering my condition, there was no excuse for her to shove me down the steps. Still in shock, I shook my head. It was nearly impossible for me to comprehend how Elle could have done something so damaging. Although my wrists hurt physically, I could not handle the emotional toll of knowing that my own sister was capable of such harmful behavior. I wanted to talk to Elle first, I told Newton. I had to know what had made her do such horrible things. In order to get an explanation or at least an apology, I needed to speak with her directly. Newton gave me his phone and dialed her number. I asked my sister directly why she had done what she had done when she responded. Elle let out a long sigh, as though the words were hard to release, and then he opened up. In a bitter tone she uttered, "To be honest, I'm just so sick of you being the center of attention in our family. You have a husband now. You're pregnant. You get to have everything in your life. But last night was supposed to be my night, only. Yet, as usual, you showed up with your pregnancy announcement and hogged all the attention." After a little silence, she spoke again in a defensive tone. "And pushing you down the stairs, that was just a harmless prank. I didn't even think you were really pregnant at first. I didn't mean for it to be such a big deal." Her remarks were painful and disturbing. It was unbelievable to me that she would put my life in jeopardy by pushing me down the stairs because she didn't want to trust me. Before I could respond, Elle added, "I've been through a lot with my failed engagement, and for you to just show up and rub your happiness in my face was just too much. Next time, I'm sure you'll think twice before trying to overshadow me again." Her answer left me in a state of shock. She was essentially blaming me for her actions and showed no remorse at all. She hadn't even shown regret once. Elle handed the phone to my mother, who had been listening on the other end, and she inquired about my well-being. I was unaware that my sister and my parents were still present. I informed her that I had suffered a fracture to my wrist but that both I and my infant were doing well. After the party, my mom told me that she, Dad and Elle had spent the entire night at Elle's house because they were all concerned about me. I sneered and said that instead of staying with my sister, they might have waited for me at the hospital if they were that concerned. My mom went on to say that she and Dad had been speaking with Elle and that they both thought she hadn't been feeling well since last night. Despite what other people were telling me, she insisted that I not report my sister to the police because it was only a foolish drunken error. I was taken aback by my mother's request. In an attempt to understand the situation, I questioned, "Why are you defending Elle when she hasn't even apologized to me?" With a heavy sigh, my mother said that Elle was currently dealing with a lot of difficulties. She said that Elle had been crying uncontrollably and that I had made her feel ashamed in front of everyone. I reminded my mother that they should first address the fact that Elle had shoved me down the stairs, which was the true problem. My mother began stressing that family is family, and that disputes like these occasionally occurred amongst sisters. Although it was true that Elle had never done anything like this before, she pointed out that this did not justify her current actions. My mother said that it wasn't worth filing a lawsuit for a broken wrist and pledged to work with Dad to ensure that this doesn't happen again. My annoyance peaked. I adamantly said that I had been unsure of what to do before I phoned her. But I had already made up my mind after speaking with Elle. A lesson had to be given to her. My mother, who was becoming more and more agitated, pleaded with me to think again before bringing charges against Elle, warning that doing so may ruin his career. I informed her that right now, I couldn't give a damn about it. My mother made a last-ditch effort to persuade me to bring charges against Elle by threatening to disinherit me if I did. She contended that it would impact Elle for the rest of her life and create a lasting record. I was stunned by her threat, but I refused to back down. I proceeded to pursue a complaint against my sister after the phone call. She hadn't expressed regret for what she had done, but I was torn about perhaps ruining her life. Update 1. I wanted to let you know that my sister was eventually taken into custody. Despite the constant calls from my parents, my spouse and I have turned off our phones. Newton is furious that my parents appear to be giving preference to my sister over me. Newton's family and other family members have contacted him in the interim to show their concern and support. Everyone agrees that it was the correct thing to charge my sister. I'm much more concerned about my baby's safety now that I've read some of your remarks. I'm worried that Elle could endanger my unborn child in the future if she were able to shove me down the stairs. In order to prevent her from ever coming near me or my family again, I want to obtain a restraining order against her. Update 2. Hi there, other Redditors. My sister, who was previously accused of assault, was just sentenced since I provided an update last month. My parents paid for her attorney, who was quite good and made a compelling argument. She was placed on probation because it was her first infraction. The judge mandated that Elle pay for my medical expenses, participate in 6 months of required psychotherapy, and meet with a probation officer on a regular basis. After the criticism they've been getting from the rest of the family, my parents are still very angry with me but are too scared to address me. My parents urged me to protect Elle by not pursuing charges against her, And I have freely acknowledged this to everyone. My parents have received reprimands from relatives on both mine and my husband's sides. No one believes that Elle's mental health issues are a good enough reason for what she did to me, despite my parents' continued insistence on it. In order for Elle to recover, I sincerely hope that my parents will take her to visit a doctor. I've requested a restraining order after the sentencing to make sure she can't ever again come near my family or me. I honestly don't know how to respond to people who question if my sister was always kind to me when we were growing up or if perhaps I missed certain clues. Yes, we occasionally battled and had our typical arguments, but I never thought she would have such a strong grudge against me. I've always loved her dearly as her older sibling, and I never imagined that she could push me down the stairs out of retaliation. Believe me, I'm just as astonished as everyone else. I suppose it's accurate to say that those closest to us are frequently the ones that betray us. Update 3. I haven't posted anything here in 5 months. Neither Newton nor I have seen Elle or communicated with my parents. I gave birth to my baby 5 days ago. After being released from the hospital, Newton and I are now giving our newborn baby the finest care possible. I heard a tap on the door last night, right before we sat down to eat. I was surprised to see my mother standing on my porch when I opened it. I was totally surprised because I had not anticipated seeing her. I said, "What are you doing here?" With caution. My husband was just as perplexed as I was to find her there, so he moved up next to me and stood guard in front of me. My mother burst into tears at once, telling me that she had just had to come over to meet the baby after hearing from some of the relatives that I had given birth to. Considering everything that had lately transpired between us, her excitement didn't seem appropriate. She continued by expressing how happy she and her father were to be grandparents at last. In order for us to rejoice as a family, she said that Dad would be coming soon with some wine and baby presents. Newton and I exchanged a look of incredulity. Did my mother truly act as though nothing had happened in the past few months? As quietly as possible, I told her that we hadn't communicated in the previous 5 months because she had chosen to side with Elle rather than me. She was standing on my porch, however, pretending that we were all on good terms simply because I had given birth, as if we were going to have a happy family reunion. Newton informed my mother that the instant she decided not to be a decent parent to me first, she had given up her right to be a grandma. He reminded her that Elle had treated me cruelly and that he would have beaten her up immediately if she hadn't been my sister, but she had shielded that monster from me because she was a mother. I could tell his remarks struck a chord because they were forceful. My mother's expression changed to one of rage. She attempted to counter by claiming that those were matters of the past and that she had done what she had to do. She maintained that we couldn't simply remove her and her spouse from our child's lives. She emphasized how unjust it was that we prevented her from seeing her grandchild. Newton, however, would have none of it. He told her that we chose who could be engaged in his life because this was our boy. Having her in our lives made neither of us feel at ease. My mother persisted in claiming that the reason she did what she did to me was because Elle had been diagnosed with depression. I shook my head in exasperation as my mother continued to defend Elle's behavior, saying she felt bad about what she had done and was trying to change. She promised that after my son was born, we would all be able to move on from the past and be a single, happy family. I sneered and clarified that I didn't desire such a thing. My mother believed she could simply ignore everything and return to our life, but circumstances had changed. There was no return to the previous state of affairs. I asked my mom to go because I couldn't take any more of it. After everything that had been said thus far, I didn't want to ruin my mood any further. Just then, my father pulled into our driveway. He exited the vehicle with a basket of presents and a large teddy bear. I was too exhausted to argue with my parents any longer, and I couldn't understand their insolence in showing up without warning. Fortunately, Newton intervened and told me to return inside and rest. He promised to deal with them and resolve the issue. I reluctantly allowed him to. I could still hear their words coming through the door as I made my way back inside. Newton's refusal to let them both in almost immediately sparked the uproar. Because he was family, my dad insisted repeatedly that he had every right to see me and the baby. My normally composed hubby lost his temper. If they didn't leave our land right away, he threatened to contact the police. Naturally, my dad persisted in arguing and insisted on leaving the baby presents behind, as though it would somehow make up for everything. Newton, meanwhile, was adamantly against taking anything from them. He made it clear to them that we did not accept their presents and that we would also obtain a restraining order against them if they ever revealed their identities again. His response clearly shook my parents. After everything, especially with a baby now involved, I suppose they thought they could just waltz back into our lives. I was pleased with my husband's handling of the matter. After our conversation today, Newton and I have decided to put cameras throughout the house as a precaution. I wish to never again see my parents. Parents used my wedding fund for my twins' lavish celebration. So I finally cut them off, but now they're back needing my help. I, 28F, must explain everything here. I've had this rivalry with my twin sister Emily for as long as I can remember. In my case, it wasn't just between us, but I suppose that's normal for siblings. Without even recognizing it, my parents were deliberately pressuring us into it. I was just there, and they've always treated Emily like she's something unique. I'll tell you why this occurred. Emily is precisely 12 minutes my senior. You heard correctly, 12 minutes. It seems that's all it takes to be my family's golden child. Emily was their miracle baby, the one who could do no wrong, from the day we were born. I wasn't a horrible kid or anything, but she always received the credit for whatever I did. My first recollection of this partiality dates back to kindergarten. Both of us participated in the school play. I played the main part in Little Red Riding Hood and Emily got 2 lines as a flower. Emily started crying on stage during the concert after forgetting her lines. My parents missed my entire performance as they hurried to console her right away. Later that evening, they didn't even recognize my accomplishment. All they could speak about was Emily's bravery for trying. For the duration of primary school, this pattern persisted. Emily would be told, "Oh honey, you tried your best," if she received a C on an exam, but I would hardly be acknowledged if I received consecutive A's. I recall working on a science fair project about renewable energy for weeks in 4th grade. I conducted research, constructed models, and even spoke with regional environmental specialists. When I handed my parents the blue ribbon for winning first place, they hardly gave it a glance. Emily had a difficult day during volleyball practice, but that's still wonderful. Can we discuss this at a later time? After that, I stopped showing them my honors. The worst thing was that they made no effort to conceal their partiality. My dad used to make jokes at family get-togethers about how Emily was their firstborn and, despite the fact that we are twins, those 12 minutes somehow made her the older sister. "Emily is our responsible one. She looks after her younger sister," he would remark. I was standing there, listening to them reduce me to Emily's shadow and nothing more. Things started to have a significant psychological impact on me in middle school. I became quite driven to prove myself. I joined as many clubs as I could, including the student council, the debate team, and the math club. I was motivated to excel at everything, so I studied late into the night. Emily, on the other hand, coasted through, doing very little but somehow receiving more attention and recognition. One particular incident in particular sticks out. I was selected to compete in the state-level mathematics competition on behalf of our school in the 8th grade. I prepared for months, frequently studying until 2 or 3 in the morning. Emily had a recreational soccer match on the same day as the competition. In addition to not showing up to help, my parents didn't even inquire about how I was doing. All they could speak about when I brought home the trophy for second place was how Emily needed to be cheered up because her team had lost their game. With greater stakes, high school was more of the same. I was still participating in as many extracurricular activities as I could, taking all of my AP classes, and keeping my GPA at 4.0. Emily spent much of her time at parties and barely kept up a C average. She was still the fun and social one though, and I was criticized for being too competitive and serious. The discrepancy was brought to light during our senior year. Because of my academic accomplishments, I was named valedictorian, accepted on a full scholarship to a top university, and even had an article in the local newspaper. Emily enrolled at community college after barely graduating. However, my parents bemoaned Emily's failure to get into her first choice school for the whole of our graduation celebration, which was meant to be for the 2 of us. In their address, they made no mention of my accomplishments. The pivotal moment occurred while attending college. I continued to keep perfect grades while working part-time to support myself while attending a prestigious institution to study computer science. I would return home from every break with the hope that something had changed and that perhaps my parents had begun to see my value. Instead, it was Emily this, and Emily that. Somehow her decision to leave community college after just 1 semester was interpreted as a sign that she was brave enough to follow her own path. Then, in my junior year, came Thanksgiving break. Everything changed when my uncle, who had always had a slightly excessive love for alcohol, made a mistake. He disclosed that my parents hadn't even intended to have twins while he was thinking back on my mom's pregnancy. They were devastated to learn they were expecting 2 children when they had only intended to have 1. My dad, being the docile person he is, simply shrugged and said, "We'll figure it out." My mom had been concerned about how they would manage 2 babies. However, their method of figuring it out was to basically choose a favorite and focus all of their energy on her, which was of course, Emily, their cherished firstborn. In their minds, Those pivotal 12 minutes were the difference. After years of wondering why they didn't care about my accomplishments, everything suddenly fell into perspective when my uncle confessed this to me when we were seated at the dinner table. It all made perfect sense. I was the afterthought and the unexpected addition, not the child they had hoped for. Something in me altered after that realization. I gave up trying to please them. I put all of my attention into creating my own life instead. I gave my all to my coursework and internships, wanting to succeed for myself, not for them. I received several job offers from prestigious tech businesses by the time I graduated. I took a job at a promising startup as a software engineer, and after 3 years, I was promoted to senior developer. Emily, meanwhile, was organizing this lavish wedding after meeting a wealthy man at a pub and having a brief flirtation. Naturally, my folks were ecstatic. They couldn't even recall the name of the company I worked for, yet they spent hours on the phone with her talking about the specifics of the wedding. My company was getting ready for an initial public offering, IPO, and my stock options were worth more than Emily's fiancé made in a year. The irony was that I was actually doing very well. They never inquired about my professional background. It was the wedding fund situation that ultimately crushed my heart. The only one who had ever treated us fairly was our grandmother. She left each of us a sizable sum of money before she died, especially for our upcoming weddings. She had been very explicit that we were to share the money evenly. She told me in private that she was aware of my parents' treatment of me and that this was her method of making sure I would have something that was exclusively mine. Naturally, though, my parents were unable to honor her last desires. Emily wanted this ridiculously lavish wedding, complete with a celebrity photographer, a fancy outfit, and several locations. They chose to take from my share of the inheritance rather than urging her to cut back or asking her wealthy fiancé to contribute more. They didn't even tell me. They didn't ask. It wasn't until months after the wedding that my inebriated uncle, yes, the same one, spoke about it at another family get-together. They responded angrily when I confronted them about it. "Oh honey," my mother remarked, dismissively waving her hand, "we were going to tell you eventually. When we can, we'll reimburse you." Even worse was my father's reply. "Well, Emily needed it more. She's the conventional one getting married, and since you're so preoccupied with your work, it's unlikely that you'll even desire a lavish wedding." I felt nothing as I stood in their kitchen staring at these folks who were meant to be my parents. This deep emptiness, without any sadness or rage. They were unable to even comprehend the wrongness of what they had done. They believed that since it was for Emily, it was totally acceptable to take my inheritance without my consent. Emily had always been the focus. I returned to my flat that evening and gave my life a lot of thought. I came to see that Emily had eclipsed or completely disregarded every significant turning point, accomplishment, and proud moment. My graduation from high school. They were too preoccupied in comforting Emily over her grades. Due to Emily's difficulties at community college, my college scholarship was hardly recognized. Emily was preparing for her wedding, so she disregarded my first promotion. I did something I should have done years ago when I opened my laptop. I emailed them and said, "I am aware of the wedding fund. I am aware that, without consulting me, you used my inheritance to pay for Emily's wedding. The way you've treated me throughout my life is more important than the money. You never made an effort to conceal the reality that I was never the daughter you desired. I'm done attempting to win your affection and acceptance. I'm over being the kid you didn't want. Do not get in touch with me again unless it is to repay my money, please." I felt a tremendous weight lift off my shoulders as I pushed send, banned their numbers, and deleted them from all social media. I didn't have to worry about trying to meet Emily's standards or gaining acceptance that I would never receive for the first time in my life. It has been a life-changing year. I gave my job and personal development my all attention. My stock options are now worth more than Emily's whole wedding expenses because our company's initial public offering, IPO, was a success. I started therapy to address my childhood trauma, purchased my own home in a desirable area of the city, and formed sincere friendships with individuals who genuinely respect me for who I am. Occasionally, Emily makes an effort to connect with distant family members or mutual friends. She will write things like, "Family should stick together," or "You're still my sister." But as she saw our parents discount my accomplishments throughout the years, where was this sense of family? When she joyfully received my inheritance for her wedding, where was that? She shared our parents' complicity in everything. Some relatives have attempted to place the blame on me by claiming that I'm being too severe, that blood is thicker than water, and other such things. However, these are the same individuals who silently observed my parents' years-long favoritism of Emily. They remained silent after seeing my treatment. They are no longer able to express an opinion. It's interesting because cutting them off has made me realize who my true family is. My therapist, who is helping me see that none of this was my fault. My coworkers, who applaud my accomplishments, and my college best friend, who assisted me in moving into my new home. The ones that genuinely care about me are these. I have been offered a role as team lead at the firm I work for, which recently launched a new office in a different state. I'm making a decision for the first time in my life without considering how it will compare to Emily or what my parents will say, and it's a great opportunity. It feels amazing to be living my life for myself. Am I the jerk for cutting them off entirely? Reddit? I often question whether I'm being overly dramatic, but every time I consider the possibility of getting back in touch with them, I reflect back on all the years I spent feeling inadequate, and I know I made the correct decision. It's going to get even more complicated now, though, and I need your honest thoughts on what I should do next. Update 1. 2 weeks ago, everything changed drastically. My phone began ringing with several calls from my uncle when I was in the middle of a team meeting. My initial reaction was to ignore it because family calls always indicate turmoil, but I decided to answer it because there was something unique about receiving several calls in quick succession. He began, trembling a little. "Hey, it's Uncle Greg." I knew right away that something was amiss. He is typically the type of guy that remains positive even in the face of adversity. "I need to discuss your parents with you." I felt sick to my stomach. I knew this couldn't be good news because I hadn't heard from them in 2 years. "What's happening?" Trying to speak steadily, I asked. "They were involved in an accident. A rather poor one. They are in the medical facility." He paused, and I heard him inhaling deeply. "Their car was struck by a truck that ran a red light. Your dad is in critical condition, and your mom has several fractures. They have spent a few days in the hospital." Days. I said it again, raising my voice. "And until now, no one had the idea to tell me." He said, "They wanted me to let you know," in a calmer tone. "I believe, they want to see you, I believe. That's not all though. Their insurance is having issues." There was, of course. He went on to tell me that 6 months prior, my parents had allowed their health insurance to lapse. They had been having financial difficulties due to credit card debt and poor investments. They were far from being discharged from the hospital, and the medical bills were already mounting. "What about Emily?" I knew the answer when I asked. Uncle Greg let out a sigh. "She said she couldn't assist with the bills when she visited once, immediately following the accident. She didn't want to ask her husband for money so soon after their honeymoon, for some reason. She is occupied with her stepchildren, her new family." That made me giggle. Emily is typical, always coming up with an excuse. Emily was too proud to approach her wealthy husband for assistance with our parents' medical expenditures, even though she had no trouble taking my fortune for her wedding. I sat in my office for a while after I hung up with Uncle Greg, gazing out the window at the skyline of the city. I didn't miss the irony. Now that my stock options had vested and I had more than enough money saved to pay for their medical expenses, I was truly in a position to assist them. Did I want to, though? I was unable to concentrate on anything else for the following few days. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, anticipating a call regarding their status. I couldn't stop picturing them in hospital beds, presumably wondering if I would ever arrive. Since they were my parents, I felt bad for even thinking about not helping. The years of favoritism, the stolen fortune, and the way they only contacted me now because they required something from me were all brought back to me though. Simply put, this was about money. Not about re-establishing contact or making amends. 3 days after Uncle Greg called, Emily texted me. "I am aware that you are performing well at work. Parents are in dire need of assistance. This is your opportunity to act morally." My opportunity to act morally? When she was using my inheritance to pay for her wedding, where was this moral compass? Where had she been all those years when she saw our parents brush off my accomplishments? My parents finally called themselves after a week of internal conflict. Although my mother's speech was weak and obviously influenced by painkillers, her deceptive methods remained same. As if the past 2 years of silence hadn't occurred, she began, "Sweetheart, we're in a really tough situation here. According to the specialists, the expenses might reach $200,000, not including rehabilitation. We acknowledge our shortcomings as parents, but..." I interrupted her. "No, you aren't, and you never will be. You haven't gotten in touch with me in 2 years, and the only reason is that you need money." My dad's voice said, "That's not fair." He was probably on speaker. "Your parents are us. Family supports family." That statement, "family helps family," set me off. Anger that had been bottled up for years came to the surface. "Family helps family." I said it again. "When you used my inheritance to pay for Emily's wedding, Where was that feeling? When you missed my college graduation, where were you? Where did you neglect every significant event in my life because you were too preoccupied with showing your admiration for Emily? After a brief period of silence, my mother began to cry. Those recognizable, cunning tears I had heard so many times when she wanted to make me feel bad. She said, "How can you be so cruel? The hospital is where we are. Your dad may require surgery. Will you truly desert us at this point?" I inhaled deeply before uttering the words I had been wishing to say for years. Yes, in fact. Yes, I am. All my life you emotionally abandoned me. You just thought of me as Emily's shadow and your fallback option. Now that Emily is refusing to assist, you turn to me. No, I will no longer be your last option. Starting with, "But we're family," my father said. No, I cut in. We're not. Since you determined that Emily was the only child deserving of your love, we have not been family. I'm finished. Never get in touch with me again. After hanging up, I blocked their numbers once more. I then texted Emily one last time, saying, "They're also your parents. Try it yourself." The days that followed were extremely difficult. I would always have these moments where I would doubt my choice. Was I being too severe? Despite all, should I still assist them? But every time those thoughts surfaced, I was reminded of how they had treated me throughout my life and how they had only ever contacted me when they wanted something. Yesterday, Uncle Greg gave another call. He attempted to guilt-trip me by claiming that my parents required physical therapy and surgery since their health was deteriorating. He said they might lose everything and that they were discussing remortgaging their home. The problem is that I have no responsibility for their financial difficulties. They made their decisions. They decided to give Emily preference. They decided to squander the money I left them. They decided to allow their insurance to expire. They are currently dealing with the fallout from their decisions. Some may accuse me of being heartless. Perhaps I am. But I've been striving to be good enough and win their love my entire life, and I'm done. I am no longer the fallback option. When Emily refuses to take charge, I'm done being the one who has to make all the repairs. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing myself, even though I realize this makes me seem callous. My mental well-being is more important to me than their guilt trips. My financial stability is more important to me than their shoddy preparation. Reddit. I know I previously questioned whether I was the jerk for cutting them off, but I need to know if I'm the jerk for not helping them pay their medical costs. This one even seems unclear to my therapist. While I feel bad about it, I also think that this is just another instance of them only wanting me around when they need me. And believe me, the narrative doesn't end here. The situation is going to become considerably more intricate. Update 2. My life took yet another drastic change 3 days ago. I was enjoying a peaceful evening at home after a very demanding workday during which we had completed preparations for the opening of our new office. My doorbell rang at precisely 8:07 p.m. when I was studying some project paperwork, enjoying a glass of pricey red wine, a minor luxury I now permit myself, and some classical music playing softly in the background. I hadn't ordered anything and most of my friends normally text before coming over, so I wasn't expecting anyone. I froze, staring through the peephole. Emily was standing there looking like the affluent trophy wife she had become, complete with a fashionable gown, flawless makeup, and a $15,000 Hermes Birkin purse in her hand. I was aware of the irony. That bag alone could have paid for a sizable amount of our parents' medical expenses. I briefly thought about acting as though I wasn't home, but throughout the previous few weeks, I had undergone a transformation. I was no longer the person who squirmed around Emily. She had intimidated me for too long, and I had allowed her to win. No more. I opened the door with my cool, controlled and slightly dismissive corporate boardroom demeanor. Leaning against the doorframe, I remarked, "Well, if it isn't my dear sister. What brings you to my humble abode?" Without waiting for an invitation, she swept by me and entered my apartment. Emily's usual behavior. Her gaze swept across my living area, taking in the original artwork on the walls, the contemporary furnishings, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the city. I could picture her mentally listing everything, most likely contrasting it with her suburban McMansion. She said, "Nice place," in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. Very cozy. She used the word cozy with that special emphasis that affluent people give to something they think is beneath them. "Stop wasting your time, Emily. Why have you come here?" She turned to me, adjusting her scarf, an anxious habit from childhood. "Mom and Dad are deteriorating. Mom's physical treatment isn't covered by their payment plan, and Dad needs emergency surgery for internal bleeding they missed at first. Unless they can provide proof of payment, the hospital threatens to suspend treatment. They are discussing selling the house." I saw her knuckles whiten as she gripped her fancy purse more tightly. Emily in her classic form. She was clearly preparing for something. And that's my problem because I arched an eyebrow, purposefully imitating her patronizing tone from our early years. Because you can help them, she said, her immaculate exterior beginning to falter. I am aware that your business went public. I checked the pricing of the stocks. I conducted research. You've got the cash. That made me giggle. The sound, which was perhaps rougher than I intended, reverberated off the walls of my flat. Oh, you have been monitoring me? How intriguing. Before using my inheritance to pay for your wedding, did you do this much research? Or prior to your own refusal to assist them? In all this, where is your wealthy husband? Emily's face turned red, another vivid memory from my early years. Her dramatic outbursts, which always ended with our parents comforting her, were always preceded by that flush when we were little. That's different, she stammered as her poise continued to falter. I now have a new family. I have obligations. Consider stepchildren. We each have our own financial plans, James and I. When a family situation arises, I can't just throw money at it. Can't just what? With a strong voice, I interrupted her. Can't you simply assist your parents, who have given you everything? Who paid for your wedding with my inheritance? Who prioritizes you the most? Who didn't attend my college graduation to assist you with your apartment move? Those parents. She waved her hand dismissively and said, that's ancient history. But I saw that she stepped back. This is roughly right now. You're being selfish, and they need help. Her use of the word selfish was the last straw. A lifetime of repressed rage and bitterness abruptly solidified into a chilly, unambiguous goal. I went silently to my home office, picked up my laptop and a few papers off my desk, and then went back to the living room. Emily, would you like to discuss money? Let's have a conversation. I rotated the screen of my portfolio dashboard in her direction. Look at these figures. My stock options are these. I'll explain it to you in words you can comprehend. This is more valuable than James, your husband, will be in 3 years. That home of which you're so proud. If I wanted to, I could pay cash for it tomorrow. As she gazed at the numbers, her face turned white instead of crimson. I went on, bringing up papers such as my investment portfolio, my pay stubs, and the most recent offers I had gotten from rival businesses. But you're a tech worker. For the first time I could recall, she stumbled, you're just a programmer. Her voice was small. Emily, I'm now a senior development director. I was making something for myself while you and your wealthy husband were playing home. I also did it without treading on anyone else, unlike you. I clicked firmly to shut down my laptop. Without using any of my resources, I could assist mom and dad by covering their medical expenses. However, I won't. She murmured, you're being cruel. But I could see that she realized that her younger sister had outwitted her. No, it is terrible to stand by and do nothing while your sister is ignored her entire life. Without asking, cruel is stealing her inheritance. Cruel only shows up at her door when you're in need. I approached the door and pulled it open. Are we finished here? Don't return? Clutching her pricey purse like a shield, she stood there. She made one final attempt to say, you'll regret this, but her voice lacked the assurance it usually possessed. When they lose everything. My only regret is that I didn't cut you all off sooner. Emily, goodbye. I poured myself another glass of wine after she left, a $200 bottle I had been putting away for a special occasion, and this one felt like it, and then I went out to my balcony. In front of me, the city lights were a tapestry of freedom and opportunity. I felt totally free for the first time in my life. No more living in Emily's shadow, no more feeling guilty, no more looking for approval. My phone was inundated with notifications the following morning. Apparently, Emily had spent the night phoning every member of the family she could get through to tell them how I had changed, how prosperity had made me callous and uncaring, and how I was leaving the family when they needed me most. Uncle Greg wrote me a very long mail on karma and family responsibilities. In response, I shared a comprehensive folder with the family group chat. It included scanned copies of my inheritance documents, bank statements that revealed how my money was used for Emily's wedding, text messages from Emily stating that she would not assist with the medical bills despite her affluent lifestyle, and a breakdown of my current net worth that showed exactly how much I could contribute if I so desired. After that, the family conversation became very silent. Our cousin Angela was the only one to reply, "Holy, you actually did it, didn't you? In fact, you were successful on your own." I worked on my future plans over the course of the following few days. In another state, I accepted the promotion, which came with a bigger package of stock options and a substantial rise. The real estate agent believes my apartment will sell for a lot more than I'm asking for in this neighborhood, so I put it up for sale. I've already begun searching for real estate in my new city. This time, perhaps a penthouse. Emily sent me one last text last night, which said, "Mom's crying every night because of you." I commented, "She had years to cry about how she treated me," and included a screenshot of my inheritance paperwork in my response. Her tears are no longer effective. After that, I blocked her number and all of my other family contacts. Closing the last chapter of a book I should have finished years ago was how it felt. You have been amazing during this journey, Reddit. Your encouragement made it clear to me that I wasn't alone in my feelings and that it's acceptable to put oneself above harmful family members. Your remarks served as a constant reminder of my decision-making process whenever I had second thoughts. Recently, I received a message questioning if achieving financial success was worth sacrificing my family. The truth is, though, that I didn't lose any. Folks who never treated me like family in the first place were folks I broke free from. My achievement just gave me the courage to refuse their treatment. It didn't change who I am. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who told me similar stories, gave me advice, or just confirmed how I felt. When I most needed strength, you gave it to me. I will begin looking for a home in my new city next week. A new life, a new career, and a new home. For the first time, I'm looking forward to the future without being constrained by obligations to my family. AITA? To some, perhaps. However, I've come to the crucial realization that sometimes being branded an asshole by toxic individuals is a sign that you're finally advocating for yourself. Reddit, thank you. I was able to discover my value and voice thanks to you. My family treated me unfairly, favoring my twin. In the end, she used lies and manipulation to steal my fiancé. Life has a tendency of catching you off guard, don't you think? I, 35F, never imagined that I would be here, sharing my heart on Reddit at the age of 35. The idea that my fiancé, the man I believed I would spend the rest of my life with, married my estranged twin sister after just a week of getting to know her, still baffles me. What brought me here? Everything's a lengthy and agonizing tale, but I must let everything out. I suppose I ought to begin at the beginning. To put it mildly, my twin sister and I have had a complex family dynamic for as long as I can remember. My sister was obviously the star child from a young age. You would assume that parents would treat twins equally, wouldn't they? False. In our family, my sister always came first and I came second. When we were young, it began with modest things. My sister always had the first choice when our parents bought us clothes or toys. She would always make the first choice, leaving me with anything she didn't like, even if the products were identical but different in color. I would be lectured about selfishness, how the gifts were the same anyway, and how acting entitled would make me never get far in life if I ever objected. The preference increased in intensity as we aged. I'll admit that I resented my sister for enjoying the attention and pampering. We were never close, and as we started middle school, our distance from one another only grew. She began hanging out with the cool kids, and distanced herself from our group of friends. I could at least have my buddies to myself and find some quiet at school, so in a way this was better for me. The distance between my sister and I continued to widen throughout middle and high school. By the time we graduated, our social networks and areas of interest had entirely changed. Because I would be interacting with her less, this worked for me. Although she continued to be cruel, particularly at school when she tried to appear cool to her peers, I had grown accustomed to her conduct by that point and was not particularly bothered by it. Things between us became so bad at the conclusion of high school that there was no turning back. I knew exactly what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I put a lot of effort into my college applications. In addition, I wanted to stay up with my pals, who were all striving for top schools. Since I wasn't interested in finding out, I never inquired about my sister's essay preparation. However, for someone who wasn't ready or didn't seem to know what she wanted to do, she exuded far too much confidence in her admissions. I was devastated to learn that she was accepted to my ideal school, but I was not. Even though I was sad, I felt uneasy. I discovered, just in time, that she had stolen my work and turned it in as her own after doing some research. I was enraged. As usual, my parents would have told me to suck it up and that nothing could be done now, so I didn't want to inform them. I had had enough of being polite and being trampled. I made the decision to go nuclear. I sent the university an email outlining her plagiarism and proving that the material was actually mine. Additionally, I informed them of the circumstances at home and asked that they use caution when responding to her. They did, however, reply and put her on a blacklist after discovering that she had plagiarized during the application process. She sat stunned when she received the email and gave me such a hateful look that I thought I would pass out. However, she was unable to tell her parents anything. That she stole my essay. What could she have said? I was more than happy that she was finally receiving the credit she deserved, even though I knew I had put her in a difficult situation. I'll confess that it was stressful and, to me at least, a little funny. She was aware of my actions and I was aware of hers. She was unable to go because it would require her to acknowledge that she had stolen my work, and I didn't want to go to my parents for a resolution. Unfortunately for her, this injustice devastated her parents. They insisted that there was no plagiarism involved, and were resolved to bring it up with the university. It became messy at this point. When my parents emailed the institution, they received a thorough response regarding her application and the work, my work, from which she had stolen. I mistakenly thought that after they witnessed what their beloved daughter had done to me, they would finally accept her for who she truly was, and perhaps, just possibly, I would start to play a significant role in the family. The exact reverse was what took place. I spent days being scolded for intentionally destroying my sister's life and profession. They chose someone to harass as soon as they discovered that I was the one who had reported the plagiarism. She stole my work, but that didn't matter. The fact that she was at fault didn't matter. The fact that she prevented me from attending my ideal school didn't matter. The fact that I had exposed her without their knowledge was all that mattered. They called me all kinds of names and stated that talking to them about it would have been the right thing to do, after which they would have come up with a solution. I informed them that letting her leave without any consequences would have been their only option, and I would have been told to accept it and apply somewhere else. My home was a wreck and nobody wanted to hear my side of the story. It was now obvious that I would always be the fall guy and that my sister would never be held accountable for anything she did. I was just waiting for college, but the following few months were terrible. I knew that as soon as I left the house, I would never return. In any case, there was nothing to return to, so I did just that. I instantly stopped communicating with my sister and my parents after leaving for college. After her little incident, she was dead to me, and I had no intention of ever seeing her again. Going to college was a welcome adjustment. I worked hard, had a good life and made good friends. Determining to succeed on my own without assistance from my family, I immersed myself into my studies and extracurricular activities. I met around this period, and we remained friends for a few years. We had the same group of friends, even though he was my senior in college. He asked me to be his girlfriend just before he graduated, and I accepted. Since he was one of my best friends and I enjoyed spending time with him, I thought a relationship would be the natural next step. He informed me that he had been crushing on me for years and had been trying to have the guts to ask me out until I said yes. Sincerely, I thought this was cute and informed him that even if he had asked me sooner, I would have said yes. For what it's worth, our connection was good. We knew each other well because we were already close friends. A certain amount of ease and candor was present and it just happened. I also told him about my family's whole predicament. I clarified that nothing could ever force me to speak to my sister again and that I had very little contact with either of my parents. I requested that he honor that. His family is picture perfect, therefore he found it ridiculous that a family could be so dysfunctional. He is the eldest of 4 siblings, all of whom are supportive and close, and his parents are deeply in love. He has never experienced my ordeal. I liked and appreciated the familial dynamic he came from, and I respected that. The affection they had for one another was really sweet. I couldn't help but feel a little envious because I had never had it. But because he couldn't imagine dysfunctional families, I made it plain to him that he should never expect me to return to my family and attempt to make things right. I trusted him since he appeared fine with it. I had no idea that this would turn out to be my worst life decision. I concentrated on developing my career after college. I was resolved to show myself, and if I'm being completely honest, my family, that I could be successful without their help or connections. I put myself into my work and worked my way up the corporate ladder. I had a prosperous marketing career, a great downtown apartment and a circle of close friends who had become my adopted family by the time I was in my early 30s. We both decided to take things slowly, but and I kept dating. Neither of us felt the need to rush into marriage because we were both focused on our careers. I felt like I had at last found someone who understood and supported me, and the arrangement was comfortable. Proposed to me 2 years ago when I was 33. Yes, of course, I said. By that point we had been dating for about 8 years, and I was certain that he was the man I wanted to live my entire life with. His family welcomed me with wide arms when he first introduced me to them. Even though it wasn't biological, I felt like I had a family at last. I formed separate ties with each of his siblings, who were very hospitable, 2 sisters and 1 brother. Even before I married him, I felt like I was a member of the family. The next natural step was marriage, and I was quite content with my life and my relationship. Planning for the wedding, honeymoon, and other details took up the whole year prior to our planned wedding last year. It was a difficult period for our relationship as well as stressful, since I recognized then that we had differences and that it would take work to overcome them. Nevertheless, we voluntarily persevered. While deciding on the guest list, we got into one of our most heated arguments. He wanted to invite a large number of people, including his immediate relatives, some uncles, aunts, his siblings' partners, and others, but I wanted a small, private wedding. However, I didn't have any family members I wanted to invite. I informed him that I genuinely didn't want my family near me on my wedding day and that I would only be inviting my friends. He initially agreed, but I could tell he was hesitant. When I asked him if there was an issue, he said that there wasn't, so I dropped it. Nevertheless, he approached me a week later and advised me to invite my family since there would be no wedding without a family present. I gave him a wide-eyed look and informed him that I had always made it plain that my family was not involved in my life. There was no reason to be upset about my parents' absence because they were unaware that I was engaged and that the bride and groom were the only two guests required for a wedding. He refused to give up. He said that any arguments I had with them could be put aside for a single day and that his intention was only to invite them to the wedding, not to establish a romantic relationship or extend forgiveness. Any invitation, I informed him, would imply that I wanted to patch things up, and I didn't want to do that. I should have left him there. Looking back, I could tell that he had chosen to hurl this at me even though he claimed to understand my reality and my upbringing, which I had always been open about. But in love, I was a fool. I nearly stopped talking to him after our many arguments, but I knew deep down that we had to come to an agreement. He finally explained to me why he insisted on inviting my family after much back and forth. He claimed that he didn't want his relatives to believe that he was getting married to a woman who didn't get along well with her family. He believed that my parents' absence would reflect negatively on his family, which is highly traditional and has always lived by the family first motto. That was not what he wanted for me. I initially believed his way of thinking to be considerate and caring, but I soon came to see how flawed it was. Since his parents and siblings already knew that I didn't get along with mine, he was more concerned about the impression his family would get, particularly his extended family, than he was about the psychological effects on me. I should have seen that the show was more important to him than his wife. I paid the price for not doing so. I finally decided to phone my folks after much back and forth, but there was where I crossed the boundary. I informed him that while I would have them there, my sister and no other family members would be present. My family would not be permitted to speak, and there would be no father-daughter dance. He had to put himself in my shoes, and that was the only need for inviting them. Fortunately, he consented, and he was aware that he had little other option. Additionally, I cautioned him against reaching out to people on his own. I would only call and extend an invitation when I thought the time was appropriate. I knew they would make something up and convince my sister to go if I told them too soon, and I couldn't agree to that. To be honest, I also hoped that they might not be able to make it if I told them too late. In this manner, even though I would be technically correct, I would still get my way. I believe M had a suspicion, but even if he had, he remained silent. So that was that. 6 weeks before the wedding, I told my parents, and they assured me that the whole family will undoubtedly be present to support me on this wonderful day. I interrupted them immediately and informed them that my sister would not be attending my wedding in any way. I would take them out myself if they attempted to be cunning and brought her anyhow, even if just the two of them were invited. They attempted to object, claiming that it was the ideal moment for the family to get back together, that I should stop being a baby, that I had gotten my revenge, and that I should be content. Before the wedding, I informed them that this was the only way I would be contacting them. They were aware of the location and the time, and they could attend if they so desired. But I wouldn't think twice about taking the required action if they tried anything. I hung up the phone after that. I was completely mistaken to believe that was a strong enough warning to stop them from making any plans. I should have anticipated that my sister would show up there and cause chaos. She did create a mess, but it was far more extensive than I had anticipated. I need to get this off my chest. Yet as I sit here typing this, I can feel the hurt and rage rising within me once more. What happened next was a betrayal so profound and agonizing that it rocked the foundations of the life I had worked so hard to create, and I needed to tell someone, anyone, what happened next. In my upcoming update, I'll continue this. I need some time to gather my thoughts because writing it all at once hurts too much. I appreciate you reading this far. I had no idea that I would be telling my tale in this way, but here we are. I would be grateful to hear your opinions and advice. Right now I feel completely lost. Update 1. A week has passed since my last post, and I'm still in shock about everything that transpired. We appreciate all of your encouraging messages and remarks. I never thought that strangers on the internet would be so generous. Where did I leave off then? Yes, the dreaded family invitation and the wedding planning. In case you're not convinced, things have gotten worse. My parents came into town via plane the week before the wedding. They asked if Em and I could meet at their hotel so they could give me something. Em persuaded me to go despite my reservations, suggesting that it might be a peace offering. He assured me that he would accompany me and that we would depart as soon as difficulty appeared. I felt sick to my stomach when we got to the motel. I sensed a problem as soon as we entered their room. My twin sister was seated on the bed, grinning smugly, and there she was. Just a few days before my wedding, my parents had ambushed us in the hopes of forcing a family reunion. I went cold. The old emotions of hurt, betrayal, and rage returned with a vengeance. Em put his hand on my back when he could tell I was upset, but it didn't help much. With her arms extended as though the past 15 years of separation didn't matter, my mother took a stand. We thought it was time to move on from the past, she remarked, her voice brimming with fake tenderness. Your sister wants to talk to you about something. My sister got up and began what seemed like a prepared statement before I could respond. I apologize for what happened with the college application, and I know I hurt you, she started. I've regretted that ever since I was foolish and young. I gave a sour laugh. Young and dim-witted? We weren't 8, we were 18. You were fully aware of what you were doing. My father added in a firm tone. Now, let's avoid bringing up previous points of contention. As a family, we are here to move forward. I looked to Em expecting him to support me and remind them of our wedding deal, but he was silent and had a serious look on his face. I trembled as I murmured, may we go now? After he paused, he said something that completely shocked me. Perhaps we ought to listen to them. After all, they are trying. I turned and left the room without saying another word. Trying to make sense of what had happened, I headed to the hotel bar and ordered a heavy drink. Hours went by. My phone was vibrating, and I chose to ignore the never-ending barrage of missed calls and messages. When I eventually returned to our flat, it was already midnight. Em was pacing the living room while she waited to wake up. Hours passed while we argued. Em insisted that I should at least attempt to make amends because family was vital. How he could be so oblivious to the suffering they had inflicted upon me was beyond me. We were clearly at a standstill as the night went on. I need some time, I responded at last. I'll be spending a few days with a friend. I must think. The days that followed were a haze. I ignored me and my family's calls and texts and stayed with my best pal. I needed time to reflect and determine my true desires. The more I considered it, the more I saw how deeply Em's actions had damaged my faith in him. I eventually consented to meet with Em 3 days prior to the wedding. A calm cafe where we had gone on our first date years prior served as a neutral setting for our meeting. I didn't miss the irony. Em appeared awful. He appeared to have aged years in a matter of days, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I was still angry and hurt, but I also felt bad for putting him through this. He started, I'm sorry, as soon as I took a seat. I ought not to have pressured you to make amends with your relatives. I was mistaken. Hours passed while we recapped past exchanges and upsetting experiences. Ultimately, we reached a decision that felt necessary but shattered my heart. Em whispered, I think we need to postpone the wedding. We clearly have some issues we need to work through. With a mixture of relief and regret, I nodded. I think that's for the best. We came away from the cafe with a rough plan. We would separate for a month, avoid communication, and give our desires some serious thought. We would then get together once more to determine whether to proceed with the wedding or, well, we didn't want to consider the other option. I began making calls the following day. I informed our vendors that the wedding would have to be postponed indefinitely. Although we lost some deposits, most were understanding. I communicated with our visitors by sending out a general email outlining the circumstances in ambiguous language. Then there was quiet. Like an unending desert, the month without communication stretched out in front of me. To distract myself from the uncertainties of my relationship, I immersed myself into my work and picked up new interests. I initially incessantly checked my phone, half hoping, partly expecting to find a message from Em. However, I noticed that I was checking less and less as the days stretched into weeks. During our connection, I began to rediscover aspects of myself that I had previously allowed to slip away. I started painting again, got back in touch with old acquaintances, and even went to the beach for a weekend by myself. I experienced a mixture of dread and excitement as the month's end drew near. Another part of me, which was getting stronger every day, questioned if perhaps this separation was for the best, but I still wanted to see him again to see if we could salvage what we had. I received a call from an unknown number the day before our scheduled meeting. I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years when I responded. The shaky voice of my sister. Please, don't get married to Emu. Suddenly, my world began to shift on its axis once more. However, that is a tale for a future update. I apologize for leaving you waiting, but I need time to think about what transpired next. I appreciate everyone listening and helping me get through this nightmare. I will return soon with additional details about the story. Update 2. My previous update was almost 11 months ago. I'm sorry for the extended silence, but I needed time to take it all in. I appreciate your support and patience, everyone. My estranged sister had just given me a startling phone call urging me not to marry M when I left off. From there, however, things only became more difficult. I met M the following day as scheduled after that enigmatic call. I knew something was seriously wrong the moment I laid eyes on him. He had black circles under his eyes and appeared gaunt. I was about to respond when he suddenly exclaimed, "I made a terrible mistake." My heart fell. My world was shattered by his next statement. With his voice hardly audible above a whisper, he admitted, I married your sister." I briefly believed I had misheard him. How was it possible for him to wed my sister? Only a month has passed since our separation. I experienced a wave of nausea as the reality set in. M then told me an absurd story that sounded like the storyline of a poorly written soap opera. My family apparently persuaded M to listen to them after I left that day. They told him stories about my early years, portraying my sister as the victim and myself as the troublemaker. What's the worst? He took them at face value. I felt offended and bewildered. Your family seemed so sincere and I thought maybe I didn't have the full picture. M attempted to clarify. I made a foolish choice. My sister and parents had hatched a complex scheme. To avoid being made fun of by his family, they proposed that M wed my sister for the ceremony. After the commotion subsided, they could have the marriage dissolved or divorced. Despite the absurdity of the proposition, M had somehow consented while he was confused and being manipulated. Stunned into stillness, I sat. I was so deeply and profoundly betrayed that I was at a loss for words to describe how angry and heartbroken I was. I got up at last. "I never want to see you again," I stated in a remarkably composed tone. "You, my sister, my parents. You're all dead to me now." The weeks that followed were a jumble of suffering, rage, and incredulity. Unable to face the world, I took a leave of absence from my job. Despite the support of my friends, I was distraught. During this depressing time, M's mother called me out of the blue. Something compelled me to answer the phone even though I didn't want to at first. "Please," she said in a tearful voice. "I must see you. You must be aware of something." I agreed to meet her against my better judgment. At a little park close to my place, we first met. Her eyes were red from sobbing, and she looked terrible. She disclosed the whole scope of what had happened. M had been duped by my family, who had played on his fears and fed him tales about my background. They had persuaded him that I was unstable and that I had fabricated tales about my family in the past. But why would he believe them over me? Still having trouble understanding, I asked. Tragically, she shook her head. He had a susceptible condition. Your relatives took advantage of the fact that your abrupt departure had unsettled him. She clarified that M's family had opposed the hurried union with my sister. Despite their attempts to dissuade him, M had carried out the plan while in a confused and manipulated state. "And now?" I inquired, fearing the response. "Your sister won't get a divorce from him. By threatening to demand a large amount of alimony if he attempts to leave her, she has been dragging the marriage along." However, the disclosures did not end there. She informed me that my sister had told them the truth about everything a few days prior while intoxicated. She acknowledged that all they had told him about me was false and that they had trapped him. She even came clean about the essay that had been taken all those years ago. Her words, "M has been devastated since then. He'd like to speak with you. He claims that he made the most significant error of his life and is unsure of how he would ever be able to apologize. Perhaps you can speak and decide what to do next, he hopes." With my head spinning from all this new knowledge, I gazed at her. I felt somewhat vindicated because the truth had finally surfaced. However, a greater portion of me was just worn out. "Well," I answered in a stern tone. "Thank you for sharing all of this with me, but M and I are no longer a we." He decided. Regardless of their marital status, he is now my sister's husband. I refused to interfere or assist him in getting out of this situation. When I said this, she sobbed and begged me to change my mind, but I refused. Telling her, my decision is final. I've moved on from that phase of my life. I'm unable to reopen those wounds. She texted me several times over the course of the following few days, urging me to speak with M, but I didn't reply. All of this was too much for me to handle anymore. I thought a lot about everything that had happened, including the life I had nearly committed to, the man I thought I knew who had deceived me so profoundly, and the family that had never really welcomed me. And I came to the crucial realization that I was stronger than everything. At that moment, I decided to use my experience as a springboard rather than a setback. I had been granted another opportunity to live my life as I had always desired, free from the burdens of my past. With fresh energy, I pushed myself back into my work. In order to resolve my trust difficulties and the residual pain from my family's betrayal, I began therapy. I became closer to my pals and was even more grateful for the family I had chosen for myself. And what do you know, things improved. It wasn't always easy, and on some days I felt like the hurt and rage would get the better of me, but I gradually began to recover. I can state with confidence that I'm in a better place than I've ever been after 10 months. I've taken up new interests, gotten promoted at work, and even resumed dating, albeit informally and much more cautiously. Ever since that day in the park with M's mother, I haven't heard from M or my family. I'm thankful they're no longer in my life, but occasionally I wonder what happened to them. They are responsible for the repercussions of their own acts. I want all of you out there who may be experiencing anything similar to know that things get better. You are stronger than you realize, even though it may not feel like it right now. Never allow a friend, family member, or romantic partner to make you feel less valuable than you actually are. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support along this trip. This is going to be my last update on the matter. This chapter of my life is coming to an end, and I'm looking forward to many more joyful ones. Cheers to fresh starts, selected families, and the inner strength we discover when we need it most. Revealing my brother's darkest secrets sparked an explosive Mother's Day confrontation, leading my family to cut ties with him. Years of repressed feelings and unresolved tensions exploded over the Mother's Day breakfast. For the sake of peace, our family continued to strive to maintain civility even though my brother Sam had always treated me badly. I was usually the silent one, wanting to be his buddy in spite of everything, and forgiving him for things I shouldn't have. For a long time I let him treat me whatever he pleased since I had no idea what a true sibling relationship should feel like when I was growing up. I've matured emotionally over the years and currently reside with my parents. I became resentful of Sam after realizing how poorly he had treated me, and I eventually stopped talking to him. Mother's Day followed. Sam and his fiancée Leah joined us for brunch. I went to help my mom even though I had a migraine because I was afraid Sam would abruptly cancel, as he frequently does. His only remarks were patronizing, but I hardly spoke to him. We went outdoors after lunch, and the heat was making my migraine worse. When I asked Sam to go, he became irate and told me that no one had requested me to come in the first place. The anxiety increased even after my mother swiftly defended me. I finally had enough. After years of frustration, I turned around and faced him. Sam had already acknowledged that he wasn't pleased with Leah, claiming that she made him miserable, but he was scared of being by himself, I reminded him. I practically reminded him of how he had wounded me. He once grabbed me by the neck and held me against a wall until I passed out when I attempted to stop him from driving while intoxicated. He has never shown regret for that night, the PTSD it created, or the grief he inflicted. Even the fact that he didn't come see me in the hospital following my injury or during my 3-month recuperation at home was disregarded by him. It was quite painful. His defense was feeble when he did reply. He asserted that my college residence was funded by our parents, as though that in some way excused his actions. They also covered him, I reminded him. Puffing up his chest, avoiding responsibility and challenging anyone to challenge him were all hallmarks of Sam. I made it plain that he was not a member of my family at that point and instructed him not to get in touch with me ever again. As they conversed, my dad gently led me back to the car. I had said everything I needed to say, so I didn't listen. My mom cut off Leah's attempt to clarify that Sam had denied me permission to stay with them due to their 2 enormous dogs. I never intended to bring my own dog Pebbles, but Sam had lied and said I did. Sam vowed that as long as I was around, he would never return to the house. Mom promptly put an end to my brother Sam's recent attempt to have my parents expel me. She said that it's entirely his fault and that I'm far higher on the family hierarchy than he is. Mom was first conflicted. As a mother, it was difficult for her to think about severing Sam's relationship even though she knew he was totally at fault. However, Mom acknowledged that she was incensed when I detailed all the horrible things he had done to me and other family members. Assuming that sibling arguments were common and that I was always the one who was fine, she even expressed regret for not disciplining him more when we were younger. Sam refused, saying he wasn't ready to deal with her yet, even though she texted him that an apology would be greatly appreciated. My parents informed me that they would not go to Sam's wedding if I was not invited. They desired that he be held accountable for his deeds. To be honest, the idea behind the wedding is that I wouldn't attend even if I were invited. I revealed to Mom that Sam had actually embezzled almost $800 from Dad over the years, which was more than we initially believed. I also disclosed that he had harmed me physically and mentally by having sex in both my parents' and my beds. Despite all, Sam's success at work is solely due to Dad's efforts, and on Father's Day, he was unable to send a text. He became upset when Mom reminded him, saying it ruined his day. That really got us going. We became aware of how badly Sam had fouled things up as we vented. Both Sam and Leah, his fiancée, don't have many friends. She is angry that their grandmother won't give Leah's child all of her attention, so she doesn't talk to either her mother or her sister. Given that I enjoy organizing things, they most likely expected me to assist in planning their wedding, baby shower and other events. Now that Sam would make me dog sit without my consent, I don't know who will assist her. Years ago, Leah made offensive remarks regarding babysitting, saying that Mom wouldn't want strangers watching her kids. This further strained her relationship with her mother. They probably thought I would act as the compassionate sister and offer assistance, but that isn't the case. Sam used to treat me like his therapist, but he didn't show any sympathy after my 14-year-old dog died. In the meantime, he revealed that he is afraid for the day she passes away since he wouldn't know what to do with one of his senior dogs. Well, he is no longer able to rely on me. Now that Leah is aware of Sam's actual feelings for her, I assume the engagement is tense. Leah is slowly coming to the realization that Sam has also lied to her about me. To be honest, I have no idea or interest in how it is going for them. Both of them are blocked. We even wager that Sam believes I'll give in and get him a present for his birthday without him having to say sorry. He will be rudely awakened. Dad was outraged and said, "I can't even trust my own family," after learning how much money Sam had stolen. For me, that was the tipping moment. I used to be amenable to apologizing and mending our friendship, but I'm done now. When Leah showed us the sonogram, I felt sick to my stomach. With the hope that Sam would change his mind, my family and I had dreaded the day when he would be married and have a child. In particular, Leah struggles to care for herself. Unfortunately, they both damaged their relationships with everyone who could have been of assistance to them. In light of everything that has transpired, my mom and I made an effort to make Dad's birthday last week extra special. Every year, Dad's place of employment hosts a family appreciation day at a nearby amusement park. Sam also works there, but unless we go together, he normally doesn't pay attention to these activities. On his birthday, Sam surprisingly texted Dad to ask if they wanted to do something over the weekend. Dad said Sam would see him closer to the date because he had been working on projects and was taking a week off around his birthday. Sam texted once again on Friday as the weekend drew near, wondering if they might get together. Dad had a little shift on Sunday, and Saturday was the day for family appreciation. Dad didn't want to go alone, so he told Sam they were busy, even though my mom had informed him he could go without her if he so desired. Even if they had been free, I sincerely hoped they wouldn't consent to meet him, so I was relieved when Mom told me about it. "Maybe we'll get back to him about his birthday around Christmas," Mom joked after reassuring me. Even though he lives only 10 minutes away, Sam is notoriously awful at commemorating occasions and providing gifts, and he frequently sends cards much after the customary time. For example, what did he anticipate happening? "After everything, I needed that laugh." As an aside, a commenter brought up the fact that Sam's chokehold was truly a felony, that is, the strangulation of a kid. I was struck with that realization. I never really thought it was a crime because I was so accustomed to his physical outbursts. On that one, he totally avoided the repercussions. Although I believe that too much time has gone, I still want to see whether there is anything I can do legally about it. In any case, hearing about the text conversation with Sam made me chuckle and helped to diffuse the tension. If Sam is ready to deal with me yet? A humorous commenter inquired. The irony is that he most likely isn't aware that Saturday was actually scheduled. Since he and Dad share a workplace, Dad might easily learn about Sam's schedule, including that Sunday duty. In any case, Sam will believe that my parents are ignoring him on my behalf and come to the realization that they are not forgiving of him so easily. He might genuinely comprehend the repercussions for the first time. Recently, I had another unsettling thought. What does Sam's violent conduct signify for my future niece or nephew if it hasn't changed? Even after 15 years, the trauma still affects me. Sam has a history of losing control under pressure, getting lethargic, and drinking more. I'm also concerned for their child because Leah can hardly take care of herself. Sam probably wants me to be sympathetic and take on the role of caregiver. But even if I wanted to, I honestly don't know if I could handle that legally. Given how much time has gone by, anxiety makes me question whether the authorities would even consider me seriously. We showed up unannounced, which actually means we came twice a year, both times when we had car issues nearby, as Leah has complained about. Her family, meanwhile, frequently visits without any problems. Leah isn't very important to any of us anyway. Not knowing if our dad would survive, she once pulled Sam and me from his hospital bed so we could go to her mom's weekly dinner. She used it as a weapon when Sam actually yelled at her on the way back, accusing him of not giving a damn about her family. Mom finally threw Sam out after he failed to discipline his dog after it hurt her, asking him to get his act together. Although I know my parents truly love me, I find it frustrating that they haven't held him accountable in the past. They were fostering children at the time to help pay for Sam's education tuition and to make ends meet, so they would have lost their license if they had reported him. By that point, Sam was only home during breaks, and fortunately, there were no other children there. Regarding childcare, I no longer have any sympathy for Sam or Leah. Before allowing them to abuse their child, or, worse, if Sam ever throws his child on me without asking, I would contact CPS. I no longer consider them family. Let's move on to the next family matter, my brother's wedding. Because of his controlling mother-in-law, there were no children. At this point, Leo, my kid, won't interact with him in any way. My family has always been close-knit and has supported me in raising Leo. I am a 46-year-old single father. Leo's favorite person in the past was my brother Jack. Because Jack and Mary had flexible work hours when Leo was younger, they frequently took him to the zoo, aquarium, or even camping. As my son got older, he began to share my brother's passions for video games, photography, and music. Leo informed me he wanted to follow in his uncle's footsteps when he was 9 years old. All of this is to suggest that they were very close. My brother told me last year that he and Mary, his girlfriend, were getting married. When I questioned Jack and his girlfriend about it, they told me it was all Karen's idea, my stepsister's mother, because I knew they didn't think marriage was a good idea. Karen was paying for the wedding, so Jack and Mary didn't give a damn, so they let her organize everything, including the location, the food, the music, etc. Karen made the decision to organize a destination wedding in an upscale hotel. Last July my son and I received the invitation that was sent to us both. If I so desired, I even had a +1. I attempted to book our hotel stay as soon as the wedding website launched. Since the link wasn't working and I didn't want to take the chance of not getting a room, I had to call the hotel. The confirmation email stated room for 2 adults, but I didn't give it much thought because I thought the hotel personnel were having trouble communicating in English. At about the same time, I also purchased our airline tickets. Less than a month before the wedding, in January, my stepsister called me in tears. Karen had chosen the wrong location. It turns out that the resort was exclusively for adults and that children were not permitted. At the time, my kid was 13. They informed me that the entire resort was child-free, so Leo wouldn't even be permitted to attend the ceremony or reception when I asked if we might stay at another hotel. Disappointed, I promised my stepsister that I would discuss it with my kid. She insisted that she and Jack wanted to tell him face to face, even though I knew how thrilled he was about his uncle's wedding. To be honest, my son was heartbroken. When he was informed that he would not be allowed to go, he broke down in tears. He begged them to move the wedding and even offered to donate all of his savings. After half an hour, my brother became irate and told Leo that the day wasn't about him and that he was being self-centered. After a while, Leo apologized and retired to his room. My son ceased communicating with my brother after the wedding. Leo would disregard any messages Jack sent him unless they were important to me. For instance, he couldn't get through to me, so he would only respond if Jack asked him to tell me something. Leo would answer simple queries at family get-togethers, such as "Can you pass the salt?" or "Help grandma with the plates," but he would turn away from Jack and Mary if they attempted to strike up a conversation or inquire about school. To make up for the wedding, Jack and Mary promised to treat Leo to a memorable spring break getaway a month after the wedding. After turning down the invitation, my son informed me that he didn't want to accompany them. I knew he had always wanted to go there, so it was devastating, but he refused to back down. Leo had a similar incident on his birthday. After I told him that I was going to throw him a party, he urged me not to invite his aunt and uncle. He claimed that if they didn't want him on their special day, he didn't want them on his. I attempted to persuade him by reminding him that they were family and that they were sincerely sorry. When I informed my brother that he was not invited, he was devastated. But this past weekend at my mom's place, things reached a breaking point. The topic of Leo's plans for college came up. Leo told my mother that he was no longer interested in going to the same university as Jack and that he had decided to pursue another course of study. "Why would I want to be like your uncle?" my son said in response to my mother's statement that "I thought you wanted to be like your uncle." I stepped in and informed Leo that although he didn't need to be so impolite, the harm had already been done. After hearing what he had to say, my brother and stepsister quickly fled. My brother texted me last night to call me a jerk for letting Leo harbor resentment. He even implied that I wasn't doing anything to improve their connection by accusing me of being envious of it. I explained to him that these were the results of his behavior and that he was solely responsible for letting his future mother-in-law organize the wedding when she obviously didn't take my child into account. He ended the call. My mother and some relatives believe that in order for us to all move on, I should make my kid forgive my brother, saying that it was only a small error and that there was no malice. However, I don't believe I ought to. My kid was obviously harmed, and he should only be given the opportunity to move past his hurt and forgive them when he is ready. Recent update. For a while, we will be avoiding family gatherings. My brother promised to accept Leo's boundaries after we spoke. In addition, he clarified the actual events, and most importantly, Leo is currently doing considerably better. Here is a longer update for those who are interested. I told my mother that until things calmed down and, more importantly, until Leo felt at ease again, we would no longer be going to family events. I believe she finally realized how much Leo had been hurting, even if she was rightfully upset. My mother surprised me by telling me that she was adamant that Leo forgive Jack since he had fallen into a depression. I clarified that pressuring Leo to forgive could end in driving him farther away. When I informed my sister that we would no longer be attending family events, she expressed sadness as well, but she claimed to understand. To ensure that the kids could still spend time together, she recommended that we establish our own weekly ritual. For the past few weeks, that's what we've been doing. Leo spends time at her place one week, then my nieces and nephews visit me the next. Leo seems content with this arrangement and it appears to be working so far. The fact that he is not under parental pressure to engage with his uncle, in my opinion, is beneficial. I texted my brother the weekend after my post, requesting a meeting and conversation. Mary wasn't there because I told him I wanted to talk to him alone. Jack instantly expressed regret for his actions and words, expressing his regret for both. He supported my presumption that his frequent arguments with Mary had caused him worry. He also said that the arguments had gotten so heated that he had thought about getting a divorce. I may come out as harsh, but I informed him that I only wanted the truth about what had happened and didn't care about that. According to Jack, he was unaware of the child-free location until November. But Mary had known for a long time, perhaps all of it, as many of you suspected. It seems that this all began when Jack and Mary took Leo to the beach a few years ago. My son unintentionally called Jack Dad when they were playing, but he swiftly corrected himself. According to Jack, it was a minor, innocuous error, similar to when a toddler unintentionally addresses a teacher as mom. Leo felt ashamed, but Jack dismissed it with a laugh. The problem was that Leo had been overheard by Jack's stepmother, Karen, and her husband Phil, who had accompanied them on that trip. Karen lost out when they got back from their vacation, saying she was triggered by a random kid calling Jack Dad, especially since she knew Mary couldn't have kids. Karen became very poisonous and aggressive toward Mary, demanding, among other things, that Leo not be welcomed over when she visited, despite Mary's attempts to clarify that it was only a misunderstanding. At first, Jack and Mary only intended to elope without a celebration when they made the decision to get married. However, Mary was tricked by Karen into allowing her to organize the ideal wedding for her only daughter. Mary gave in because she wanted to maintain harmony and was worn out after years of emotional manipulation. Karen deliberately selected the child-free location and took control of the wedding preparations. Mary found out after the place was reserved, but Karen played the victim when she attempted to protest. According to Mary, she tried to work out a deal with the resort, requesting an exception so the kids could stay at a separate hotel and yet attend the ceremony and reception, but the manager was adamant about the rules. Mary became more and more nervous as the wedding date drew near, and in November she told Jack the truth. My brother claims that Mary's emotional outburst was caused by her mother's persistent bullying and manipulation. And she felt terrible for allowing things to come to this point. Jack informed me that rather than excluding Leo and my sister's kids from the wedding, he would have intervened and called it off if he had known sooner. Canceling was not an option though, as many individuals had already reserved their hotel rooms and flights by that point. Ultimately, I informed my brother that none of this justified their actions, particularly Mary's. A woman in her 40s was arguing with a child. When all Leo wanted to do was offer the $2,000 he had saved so he could attend Jack's special day, she screamed at him and called him selfish. I told Jack that he had disappointed Leo, who admired him and thought of him as a hero. Jack had demonstrated to Leo that Jack valued him more than he did. I also informed him that I would be going low contact myself and that I would continue to support Leo's decision to stop communicating with him. I told Jack that he had already apologized enough when he begged for another chance to apologize to Leo. He had no choice except to wait and see if my kid would ever accept his apology. Despite his seeming sadness, Jack assured me that he would honor our requests and give us some space and time. Regarding my son, I expressed regret for not advocating for him earlier and for making him attend weekly family meetings. I informed him that he was free to choose how he wanted to manage that aspect of the family in the future. Although he was hesitant to stop going, I assured him that I would always be there for him and that I wouldn't be offended by his choice. Leo recommended that we spend more time together, just the two of us, rather than attending weekly family events, which pleased me. He suggested that we partake in some of the things he and my brother used to do. We attended a vintage car exhibition last week, and we're going to see Wicked the following week. It sounds like fun, but I'm not a theatrical person. I also expressed my concern that he had stopped doing the activities he loved and advised him not to give them up because he had a disagreement with a loved one. I clarified that he may still enjoy things alone or with a companion. He acknowledged that he had stopped doing such things out of spite for Jack, even though he truly wanted to. I chose to buy him some games that he had been looking forward to but had refunded following the altercation with my brother as an early Christmas present. Using his PC and my PS5, he even persuaded me to play one of his Final Fantasy games online. Since the last Final Fantasy the game I played was still in 2D. I'll admit that I have no idea what I'm doing, but he seems to like seeing me fail. We would appreciate any advice you may have. For my birthday, we ultimately agreed to travel to his ideal location. I was a little depressed that I wouldn't be celebrating my brother's birthday for the first time in nearly 50 years, but all that matters is that I had my son. Leo is less anxious and happier as a result of family matters. In relation to family, it appears that they are at last honoring our limits, which is a relief. All I can hope for is that my brother can improve his marriage. Even though I don't like what they did, I do want him to be content. My parents always favored my adopted sister, even pushing me to combine my store opening with her graduation. This time, I got my revenge. I'm a 24-year-old male who grew up in what appeared to be a normal suburban middle-class family, but my parents' actions have caused me chronic suffering all of my life. Their entire reputation in our neighborhood was based on the fact that they were these wonderful people who, in all honesty, loved their adoptive daughter even more than their biological son. Few people are fully aware of the impact this had on me. My adoptive sister Emma, who was 3 at the time, was brought home by my parents when I was 6. Everything in my life changed on that day. I was ecstatic when my parents sat me down in our living room and discussed the possibility of adopting a sibling. Most afternoons I waited for my parents to get home from work by playing games in our backyard by myself. The children in the area were either much older or younger than me, and I had no siblings with whom to play. It seemed like the ideal answer to have a sister with whom I could share my toys and hang out during those long days. It was just what I had hoped for when Emma initially came. During those peaceful afternoons at home, we played together, had snacks, and I at last had someone to chat to. But over time, little shifts in my family's dynamics continued to accumulate. Emma became the center of my parents' attention, and they made all of their decisions with her best interests in mind. If Emma wasn't in the mood, they would postpone weekend family activities, modify dinner arrangements to suit her tastes and rearrange their schedules so that they could attend all of Emma's school functions while missing mine. I began to feel marginalized in my own household, as if my parents were losing interest in me. There is more to this narrative than just sibling rivalry, even though I am aware that some may assume I am just jealous. There was a noticeable difference between Emma's and my parents' approaches to childcare. My mom quit her 8-year accounting job to become a full-time mother within a week after Emma's arrival. In contrast to when I was born, Mom returned to work as soon as her maternity leave ended, putting me in the care of different people. I spent most of my time at my grandparents' little apartment or with whatever teenage babysitter they could afford that month because my parents were constantly worried about money back then and worked extra and weekend shifts. The babysitting situation was anything from perfect. Instead of truly watching me, these sitters, who were mostly high school students looking for additional money, often saw their position as an opportunity to hang out with their partners. As they sat in the living room, texting or chatting on their phones, I would spend hours by myself in my room. Sometimes, when they thought I was sleeping, Their boyfriends would sneak in through the garage or climb through our rear window. My parents would terminate the present sitter after I repeatedly told them about these instances, then hire a new one who behaved similarly. During years, this cycle persisted, and I felt that no one genuinely cared about my welfare during the majority of my early years. I believed that everything would improve when Emma arrived. I took my responsibilities as a big brother seriously, even though I was only 6. I gave her access to all of my toys and even assisted her in learning the letters, as much as a 6-year-old could. It was good to have my mom at home all the time. I believed we would finally be able to do everything I saw other children doing with their mothers, such as going to the park or baking cookies. Rather, as the big brother, my mom expected me to be mature and self-sufficient while spending all of her time and energy on Emma, treating her like a princess. When my parents changed the plans for my birthday, things really started to get tricky. Emma's true birth date was unknown to the orphanage and she had been discovered abandoned at a shopping mall. After conducting a number of tests, including dental work, developmental evaluations, and physical examinations, the doctors determined that she was around 3 years old at the time of her discovery. My parents decided that Emma should share my birthday rather than keeping the date she was given at the orphanage or picking any other day of the year. They portrayed this concept as though it were a unique privilege for me. I began to notice small differences every year, but those early combined birthday celebrations were tolerable. Even though I continued to get gifts and eat some cake, Emma started to dominate the gatherings. Family, friends, and relatives would show up with twice as many presents for her, gushing about how wonderful it was that we celebrated together and hardly seeing me. Emma's backstory appeared to captivate everyone, who treated her more like a queen than a mere child. As everyone gathered around Emma to listen to her recount the same adoption tale they had heard dozens of times before, I sat there, silently opening my gifts, trying not to feel invisible at my own birthday celebration. I still find it annoying that my parents had Emma share my birthday. She was already officially given a date by the orphanage, the day she was discovered. We could have chosen any day that may have been Emma's special day, such as my aunt's birthday in September or my grandparents' anniversary in March. However, my parents purposely picked my birth date because they thought it would help Emma feel more a part of the family. The one special day of the year when they are the focus of attention for the majority of children is their birthday. However, my parents used this innocent youthful delight as just another reminder that Emma's needs came first. They concluded this choice with sentimental platitudes about sharing and family ties, which prevented a 6-year-old from expressing dissatisfaction without feeling self-centered. The only person who appeared to realize something was off was my uncle. During that first joint party, he drew me away to ask if I truly felt comfortable with everything. By the time I was 10, I no longer celebrated birthdays but loathed them. Emma was in charge of every step of our combined celebrations, from picking princess themes that made me feel uncomfortable at my own party to selecting a cake that I didn't even enjoy. The issue with the guest list was especially unfair because I was only allowed to invite 5 of my friends, but Emma would bring 20 or more from her different activities to our home. Because of this rule, I had to pick my friends carefully every year, which occasionally strained my bonds with those who were unable to go. After I was unable to invite my best buddy to my 11th birthday, we stopped communicating for weeks. When I wanted to invite a 6th buddy one year, the inequity of these parties became even more apparent. My parents denied the request right away, claiming that our home could already host as many people as possible. Emma's pals and their mothers, who needed to supervise their daughters at all times, were able to find space nonetheless. My parents used their go-to justification that girls require extra supervision to brush off my worries when I brought up the fact that my pals arrived alone. Emma's friends and their mothers, meanwhile, occupied our entire living room and treated me like a guest at what should have been my birthday. On multiple occasions, I plucked up the nerve to propose holding separate parties. Every time I tried, my parents would cut me off with prepared answers about Emma's challenging past. They would bring up her terrible beginning in life for the 100th time, utterly disregarding the fact that they were making a difficult present for me by consistently denying my feelings, or they would tell me that she didn't know her true birthday, as if that somehow justified taking over mine. I always felt bad about bringing up the topic in these chats, as if I were being selfish for wanting a day to myself. I eventually gave up arguing over my birthday. In what had become Emma's special day, featuring her brother, I learned to put on a smile and play my part. The pain persisted. It simply became a recurring emotion on each birthday. Emma unwrapped twice as many presents than I did during these parties, and I would sit silently in the corner and try to look joyful while family members swooned over her and hardly acknowledged me. Finding my passion for making things with my hands was the one silver lining in all of this. Making a pencil holder out of an empty cereal box one dull afternoon was the beginning. Before long, I was turning a variety of everyday objects into works of art. Bins of gathered materials, such as broken jewelry, plastic bottles, and old newspapers, anything I could repurpose, filled our garage, which became my go-to spot. I watched do-it-yourself videos for hours on end, learning new ways to make everything from elaborate jewelry to gorgeous wall hangings. My works, which were solely mine and which Emma was unable to share or take over, gradually filled my room. By my early 20s, what began as a therapeutic pastime in my teens had developed into a lucrative internet business. I worked a day job at a local coffee shop and spent many hours improving product images, writing descriptions, and running my online store. Social media users began taking notice of my handcrafted goods, and soon I had loyal clients from all across the nation. With cabinets brimming with supplies, and a special shipping station in what should have been my dining room, my tiny apartment was transformed into a workshop. My funds ultimately allowed me to create my own physical store after 3 years of meticulous financial planning, working overtime, and reinvesting nearly every penny of earnings. I discovered the ideal location, a former boutique with exposed brick walls and lots of windows in a bustling shopping area. 2 months ago I signed the lease, and in my free time, I designed exhibits, planned the store layout, and planned a grand opening event. This was meant to be my chance to shine, to prove to everyone that the boy who sat in the corner on his birthdays had accomplished something meaningful. I even engaged a local photographer to capture the entire occasion. My folks reacted in a predictable way when I told them about the store opening. After 5 minutes or so of their seeming excitement, my mother revealed that Emma was graduating from college at the same time. They suggested that we combine the opening party with Emma's graduation celebration before I had even finished outlining my preparations. My dad nodded as though this was the most sensible notion ever, and my mom remarked, "Think about it, we can invite everyone once instead of making them come to 2 separate events." The irony of attempting to combine my milestone with Emma's once more went unnoticed by them. I declined right away, stating that I wanted my accomplishment to be the main focus of this celebration. When I resisted, my parents seemed surprised, as if they didn't understand why I wouldn't want to share this moment with them. Using their tried and true guilt-tripping strategies of making things easy for everyone, they persisted in pressuring me, accusing me of being selfish and challenging. They used the same expressions they had used when I was a child. "It's only one day, and why can't you be more understanding?" But this time was different. I had worked alone for years to establish this business, staying up late to fulfill orders, interacting with challenging clients, and learning every aspect of business management by making mistakes. I firmly said that this event would exclusively be about the debut of my store. They were no longer successful in making me feel bad. My parents became irate and said they might not attend the opening at all when they saw that I wasn't going to back down. I told them that was their decision for the first time in my life. I was left feeling bewildered and frustrated by the entire event. Instead of being proud and encouraging, they were attempting to minimize my achievement by making it about Emma once more. Here I was, their kid, accomplishing something important all by myself. They didn't think I deserved a celebration of my own, even though I was an adult with my own company. I was no longer a 6-year-old who could be persuaded to share his wonderful day, but the same patterns from my early years were reoccurring. Regardless of who came to celebrate, I made the decision that my store opening would be my time alone. Update 1. I got hundreds of answers after venting my unhappiness online, but one message in particular truly resonated with me. My parents had unwittingly given me the ideal opportunity for retaliation, someone pointed out. The more I considered it, the more obvious it became. A college graduation would inevitably be eclipsed by the opening of my business, especially when I could give everyone first dibs on my merchandise. Directly beneficial things always pique people's curiosity more. I agreed to my parents' proposal in a message rather than continuing to oppose the combined celebration. I informed them that I had changed my mind and that I believed they were correct to gather everyone for a single, large celebration. My parents were ecstatic at my seeming change of heart, likely believing that their guilt trips had won me over once more. I continued to be cooperative throughout all of the planning sessions, nodding in agreement as they talked about food possibilities and decoration ideas. As I had anticipated, my parents took full charge of organizing the celebration. They planned the catering, made arrangements with all of our family members and guests, and reserved a pricey location, all in keeping with Emma's graduation theme. Every choice, including the color scheme and the kind of music to be played, was created with Emma's preferences in mind. The invitation cards served as the last piece of evidence that I had made the proper choice. The phrase "celebrating Emma's graduation" was printed across the top of these ornate, gold-bordered cards. Nowhere, not even in the small print at the bottom, was my store announcement mentioned. This was exactly what I had planned, but my parents undoubtedly believed I would be unhappy. Everyone in attendance would be completely taken aback by my revelation because they were all focused on Emma's accomplishment. During those weeks, I worked quietly to finish the details of my store debut and prepare my own contents. My parents had invited almost everyone, so the party location was just what you would anticipate. I couldn't have timed my announcement more perfectly. The bartender noticed me and gave me a fresh glass of champagne just after all the remarks but before the cake cutting. As I got up, everyone's eyes were on me, presumably anticipating another homage to Emma. While my parents were busy welcoming guests, I worked with the venue personnel to create my promotional materials earlier. I didn't need sentimental appeals or flowery wording, my declaration was direct. I just said that next month, after years of developing my online business, I will establish my first physical location. Groups gathered around me in a matter of minutes as people inquired about the store's location, the goods I would be carrying, and the exclusive deals I would be providing to friends and relatives. My aunt was now showing everyone photos of my products on her phone after she had just completed speaking about Emma's academic accomplishments. There was a noticeable difference between my parents' private and public responses. As family members congratulated me, they forced smiles and nodded in agreement, maintaining their typical flawless demeanor in front of the guests throughout the evening. However, I could sense the stress in their body language, my dad's jaw tightening whenever someone brought up my store, and my mom's hands trembling a little while she served cake. Emma disappeared from her own graduation celebration shortly after her champagne toast failed, and hardly anyone listened to her rehearsed speech about her time in college. My mom's facade eventually broke when the last relative left and the caterers started to clear up. The mom, who had taught me to share the spotlight for years, confronted me and accused me of spoiling her daughter's graduation celebration. Calmly, I stated my stance, stating that I had just announced my business as scheduled and that this joint celebration was their idea, not mine. My father's response demonstrated the extent of their partiality. He jumped right to blaming me of jealousy rather than admitting that they had been treated unfairly for years. I had seen this trend since I was a little child. Any attempt to assert my own space was viewed as selfish or envious. After 20 years of holding back, I finally said it. I detailed every celebration, birthday, and moment that had been appropriated and turned into Emma's unique time. For once, I was just expressing the facts about their behavior pattern and wasn't requesting sympathy or compassion. My parents resorted to their standard defensive tactic, making the same claims they had made all through my early years. They brought up Emma's terrible beginning, her desertion, and the fact that she didn't know her biological family, which made her need further help. These were the same excuses I'd heard at every family get-together, school function, and birthday where my needs had been neglected. However, I didn't feel bad about what they said this time. I had worked with my therapist for years to process these emotions, realizing that their actions were motivated by their desire to be viewed as saviors rather than Emma's needs. We were all unaware that Emma had come back to the location and was waiting in the doorway when we confronted her. Putting on the dramatic show that had always worked so well for her, she rushed into the room with mascara streaming down her face. She blamed me, saying that I was envious of her position in the family and had always detested her. In actuality, I had spent my early years attempting to be the ideal big brother, giving up my personal space and festivities, all the while being informed that it was never enough. Instead of being the recipient of our parents' unrelenting favoritism, she was now behaving as though she had been the target of my anger. The days after the celebration demonstrated how ingrained my parents' partiality was. They concentrated only on Emma's injured feelings, ignoring the ways in which their actions had exacerbated the problem. They contacted me over and over again, requesting not just an apology, but also that I pay for Emma's vacation so she could get over the stress. Their request was quite ridiculous. They wanted me to pay Emma thousands of dollars only because people were genuinely interested in my business success rather than Emma's graduation. They demanded that I give them my hard-earned money so they could pay for Emma's vacation after she felt overshadowed at one party. My answer to their demands was straightforward. I left. I was done playing their game after years of attempting to be understanding and accommodating. My parents appeared surprised that, unlike so many times in the past, I wouldn't give in and apologize right away. Their trump card had usually been Emma's tears, but they weren't working this time. Nothing would ever change, as evidenced by their inability to recognize the hypocrisy. Emma was furious over sharing attention at one occasion, but I had been forced to share or give up the spotlight at every celebration for 20 years. I had already attempted to discuss these matters with my family. I made several attempts to discuss my parents' partiality with them during my late teens and early 20s. I tried a variety of strategies, including polite conversations at family dinners, long emails outlining my emotions, and even suggested family therapy. The identical response was given to each attempt. Emma had a difficult start in life. This expression became their go-to justification for anything I said that hurt or irritated them. When I was 19, I sobbed as I talked about how lonely I felt at my own birthday parties during a particularly trying conversation. All my mother could do was remind me of Emma's desertion. I eventually came to terms with the fact that my parents couldn't see their own actions clearly after years of this habit. At the age of 21, I left their home and rented a modest apartment across town with the first earnings from my internet business. Our relationship has grown more surface level ever since. We occasionally visit one another at family get-togethers, send each other birthday greetings, and share significant life events, but there is no longer any genuine connection. No in-depth discussions or emotional exchanges. I've stopped expecting them to change or see things my way, but they still don't understand why I've separated myself and continue to blame me for not being more understanding of Emma's needs. Update 2. My parents surprised me with an even more absurd demand just when I thought they had had enough of the commotion surrounding the graduation party. They unexpectedly showed up at my flat prior to the big opening of my store. They sat uneasily on my couch at first, acting casual as they inquired about the store's preparations. However, they then disclosed their true motivation for coming. They wanted me to appoint Emma as the store manager. Their argument was that she shouldn't have to go through the typical job search process like everyone else because she had a college degree. They seemed to believe that I had a duty to give Emma a ready-made job because I had worked so hard to develop this company over the years. When my parents enumerated Emma's qualifications for running my store, the conversation swiftly turned bizarre. My dad claims that her primary qualifications were that she was pretty, smart, and had a general business degree, as if being physically attractive had anything to do with managing a retail establishment. I had studied customer service, inventory control, and company operations for years, but it seems that Emma's beauty outweighed all of that knowledge. My mom didn't hesitate to suggest that Emma should also cut the ribbon during the store opening when I mockingly inquired if they wanted me to do anything more for their precious daughter. What was she thinking? Emma might feel less important at the graduation celebration, but it would make up for it. They believed Emma deserved more publicity, therefore they wanted me to give a management position in my company to someone who had no retail expertise and allow her to serve as the face of my store opening. However, this was no longer about birthday celebrations or toy swapping. This was my source of income, my career accomplishment, and something I had created on my own without their assistance. They reacted to my rejection in the same way they had always done. By manipulating my emotions. The guilt trips came first, followed by charges of selfishness and threats. With the same firmness that she had used to make me share my birthdays, my mom offered them an ultimatum. Either I give Emma what she wanted, or they wouldn't come to the store opening. Emma's arrogant expression as they threatened me informed me that she expected me to comply, just as I always did. They were all startled when I instructed them not to come at all and agreed to their requirements instead. Even without my immediate family present, the store opening surpassed all of my expectations. The room was crowded with my extended family, devoted clients from my internet business, and encouraging friends. I told my family members the truth without feeling ashamed or sorry when they nervously inquired about my parents' absence. Some expressed sympathy, while others were uneasy, but I didn't care about controlling other people's emotions in relation to my family's circumstances. After opening for several months, my store is doing quite well. Expecting me to come apologizing like I had so many times before, my parents tried their customary silent treatment, but now their silence is peaceful instead of terrible. To fit their idea of the ideal family, I no longer feel the need to shrink myself. Caught my wife cheating, moved on, and found new love, until my ex tried to run over me and my new girlfriend in a jealous rage. I've been a lurker on Reddit for a while, but today I finally have a story to tell. Since my life has been so chaotic, I haven't had time to write about it, let alone breathe, even though I've wanted to post this for months. I can now talk about what occurred to me now that everything has been resolved, and perhaps it will assist someone else avoid a similar circumstance. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a 36-year-old man who married a 35-year-old woman named Carolyn for what I believe to be eternity. In the end, I will never be able to reclaim those 6 years of my life. At least I kept telling myself that our marriage wasn't awful. When we connected on Instagram, I truly believed I had struck gold. She seemed ideal, humorous, and beautiful. My early years were quite chaotic, so I was especially alert for warning signs. My dad was the victim of severe abuse from my mom, who would yell matches at 3 in the morning, throw plates all over the room, and basically take everything because he loved us and didn't want to leave. You can know that when I was dating Carolyn, I was constantly on guard. I spent 2 years scrutinizing every aspect of her life, including how she handled money, stress, and waiters, basically, everything you should look for before committing to someone. To be completely honest, she aced every test. She was compassionate, tolerant and giving, qualities my mother lacked. I believed I had done my research, thoroughly examined her and discovered a decent woman. I even recall telling my closest friend that I had finally ended my family's abusive cycle. I was mistaken about that one, man. But I'll talk about that later. We got married in a gorgeous ceremony, purchased a charming suburban home, and began what I hoped would be our happily ever after. I had no idea that I was about to enter a nightmare, albeit a distinct one from the one I had known growing up. About 2 years in, everything started to go south. I mean extremely south. Every month like clockwork, we had huge blowout fights instead of being the couple everyone envied. It was also constantly over the most ridiculous stuff, like the dishes in the sink, my late work, her hanging out with her friends, or even the TV shows we watched. I really thought we could work things out, so I was working so hard to keep our marriage intact. This was the woman who would surprise me with weekend excursions and leave small messages in my lunchbox. How we had gone from that to her yelling at me because I had purchased the incorrect brand of coffee was beyond me. I recommended couples therapy because I'm the kind of man who thinks things should be fixed rather than thrown away. In fact, I pleaded for it. We attended exactly one session, and holy hell, what a fiasco that proved to be. Carolyn replied, "It's your idea, so it's your expense." So I selected a really competent therapist who specialized in married couples, scheduled all the meetings, and even paid for it out of my own pocket. The therapist began highlighting some communication problems and raising the possibility that Carolyn wasn't managing conflict in a healthy way. She cried uncontrollably, said the therapist was assaulting her, and vowed never to return. I was attempting to make her look crazy, she continued, calling the therapist a quack. I later learned that her father had passed away just before our arguments became increasingly heated. Grief does strange things to people, so I tried to be understanding, but she refused to talk about it, refused to receive assistance, and continued to get angrier and more aloof. Her yelling battles could wake up the entire neighborhood, but she never got physical or broke anything. On one occasion, our neighbors believed someone was being murdered and phoned the police. Carolyn was shouting at me because I had neglected to get her dry cleaners. We eventually settled into this strange pattern in which we essentially just shared a room and occasionally had sex. We would get up, leave for work, return home, have dinner while watching television, and then retire to bed. Repeat after rinsing. We hardly spoke anymore, which is the only reason the fights decreased in frequency. But I was still foolishly in love with her. That's sad, isn't it? I kept reminiscing about our early years, telling myself that we could return there with enough effort. I firmly believed in the for better or worse part of our marriage vows. I suppose I overlooked the fact that those vows also included forsaking all others. I'll get to that part though. I was brought up to believe that marriage is holy, so perhaps I should have recognized the warning signs. You stick it out and work on it unless someone is being hit or cheated on. It turns out that I was unaware of one of those deal breakers that was about to happen. Allow me to explain how everything went wrong. I work at this dull corporate job, nothing special, just your average mid-level job, pushing papers and going to meetings all day. The kind where you're not important enough to fly first class, but you're important enough to travel. I had been dispatched to a business expo in a different state, where I was expected to spend 4 days networking with potential clients and acting as though I was interested in PowerPoint presentations. My life chose to take a huge turn for the worse at this point. Our firm back home experienced a serious issue 3 days into the expo, something involving servers crashing and losing customer data, the usual corporate emergency fare. Everyone was called back early by my supervisor. I quickly reserved the first trip home because I'm the devoted worker that I am, or perhaps I'm just a fool, you decide. I was thinking of this lovely, dumb concept. Do you remember the romantic reunions in films where the husband surprised his wife? Yes, I did believe that would occur. I planned this surprise during my whole Uber trip from the airport. I stopped at a posh florist and spent $80 on her favorite flowers, which were pricey purple orchids that she always said brought back memories of our first date. I even got her some champagne and some of her favorite high-end chocolates. I believed that this might be a new beginning for us. I thought that this impromptu gesture would remind her of the reasons she fell in love with me in the first place, since we had been acting so distant lately. With my chocolates and flowers, I felt like the greatest husband in the world when I arrived home at 2 p.m. Her car was in the driveway, which made sense because she worked from home on Thursdays, and the house appeared to be typical. However, I recall a few strange things, such as her favorite playlist playing from upstairs, which she only ever listened to when she was feeling particularly upbeat. Though I assumed she had a buddy over for lunch or something, there were 2 wine glasses in the sink. God, I was such a fool. I was so eager to surprise her that I went right upstairs to our bedroom. Although I could hear other sounds and the music was growing louder, my brain was not comprehending what they meant. Do you remember the scene in horror films where everyone yells at the character to keep the door closed? That character was me. My world fell apart when I pulled open the door to my own bedroom and turned the doorknob. That 1 second turned every single pleasant memory, trusting moment, and I love you into ash. I will never be able to forget what I witnessed in that bedroom until the day I die. Beneath some strange guy in our bed was my wife, the person I had loved, supported and built a life with for 6 years. The same bed where I had hugged her after her father passed away, and where we had discussed having children in the future. She was acting as though I didn't exist and that our marriage meant nothing at all, not even attempting to keep quiet about it. As I stood there, a total moron, watching the flowers I had purchased fall to the ground and scurry like cockroaches when the lights are turned on. The man had the audacity to try to scurry past me like I was a doorman, and I will never forget this. I lost it while he was fumbling to put on his clothing and strewing things all over the place. Something inside of me shattered. Perhaps because I saw him with my wife or because he believed he could simply walk away from ruining my marriage. My hand was around his throat before I even realized what I was doing. It wasn't a death grip, but it was a clear signal that he wasn't simply leaving. Instead of hitting him as you might think, I gave him 2 open-handed slaps across his face, resembling a dramatic housewife from a soap show. I'm still baffled as to why I didn't just punch him instead. After I caught him with my wife, the man's expression quickly changed from one of fear to one of rage, as if he were truly going to try to fight me in my own home. Can you fathom the sheer disdain and the audacity? He probably fed him stories about being single or separated, so I'm willing to wager he was unaware that Carolyn was married. He most likely believed that I was some sort of insane ex-boyfriend. I released him before the situation worsened, not because I was afraid, but because I immediately saw that this pitiful excuse of a man wasn't worth being charged with assault. It wasn't he who promised me anything. He didn't make a vow to love and care for me till the day we die. He was just another man who was unable to control himself. The true traitor was still in that bedroom, most likely considering how to deceive her way out of this situation. My entire body trembled as I turned back to Carolyn. The lady I had dedicated my entire life to for 6 years was there, fumbling with her bra as if it were a trivial annoyance. The purple orchids I had purchased were all over the floor, most likely crushed beneath the man's running feet. She said the mirror had better lighting, so I hung it up for her last Christmas, and I just stood there watching her get ready in it. She was also taking her sweet time, as if she hadn't just ruined our entire marriage. She was avoiding my gaze in the mirror, straightening her hair nonchalantly, and behaving as though she hadn't just ruined everything we had worked so hard to create. You want to know what this woman had the audacity to say to me after I literally caught her cheating? As if I were a door-to-door salesperson who had disturbed her day, she gave me this irritated look and asked, "Why are you even back?" Not a "I'm sorry, I can explain," or any of that nonsense about fundamental human decency. The fact that I came home early and caught her cheating, in our bed, in the house we bought together, the house where I paid the majority of the mortgage, actually annoyed her. Never in my life have I wanted to strike someone so much. In reality, my hand was twitching as I recalled how satisfying it was to slap her affair partner, but I just stood there, immobilized, while she had the audacity to mutter under her breath, "You weren't supposed to be back," as if I were to blame for her early return home or that I should have called ahead to arrange a convenient time to catch her cheating. This woman's sheer outrageousness, 6 years of marriage, and this is what it meant to her. A small hiccup in her fun-filled afternoon. Do you realize what's truly broken? While all of this was going on, I could see our wedding picture on the nightstand. The same bedside table where she had placed the breakfast I had prepared for her the previous weekend. She had been telling me she was too tired for sex in the same room for the previous 3 months, but she obviously had plenty of energy for this stranger. Like a fool, I stood there thinking about all the late nights at work she had told me about, all the girls' nights out, and all the times she had mentioned going to see her mother. What was the duration of this? How many men had shared my bed with me? Carolyn was by no means finished talking, so I was about to find out. Then this woman, this nasty jerk, went totally crazy. As though I had just blown apart our marriage, she began yelling at me. "You weren't expected to return," she screamed, her face turning red and splotchy, just like when we fought. "You are to blame for this. You wouldn't have seen this if you had simply informed me that you were returning home." This woman would have earned an Olympic gold medal for her mental gymnastics. She even had the audacity to accuse me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. "But hold on, things will improve. You declined my request for an open relationship," she screamed, as if it somehow justified her actions. Yes, 6 months prior, she had asked me once in a drunken chat, and I had declined since I was a monogamist. Apparently, that meant she should do it anyhow, in her deranged thinking. I have necessities, she continued to rant, as if I were a monster for asking my wife to be obedient. She attempted to cheat on me *nicely*, which is really insane. I tried to do things without hurting you. How thoughtful of her. Something broke inside of me. 6 years of devotion, trust and love were reduced to I have needs. Every kiss, I love you, and moment we spent together were all phony. My palm trembling with anger, I took 3 steps across the room. I lifted my fist and grabbed her by the collar of the shirt I had purchased for her birthday last month. She injured me, and I wanted to hurt her too. Anything that matched the agony ripping through my chest was what I wanted her to feel. However, I couldn't do it after seeing the dread in her eyes, real, authentic fear, despite the fact that she had just shattered everything I held dear and had shown me that our entire marriage was a sham. That's not me. I'm not going to be that man. I vowed never to put that expression on anyone's face, and my mom used to stare at my dad with the same terror. So with my hands still clenched but lowered, I moved back and released a go of her shirt. To let her feel even a small portion of my suffering, the dark side of me still wishes I'd given in to that anger. Not because she didn't deserve it, but because I deserved better than to become what I've always feared. I'm glad I didn't. There I was, standing in my own bedroom, looking at this stranger in my wife's face while surrounded by crushed purple flowers. This was how our 6-year marriage ended, with her accusing me of being the one who discovered her infidelity. Standing there now was the woman who used to kiss me goodbye every morning, accusing me of failing to phone ahead to arrange for my discovery of her affair. This woman changed identities faster than a TV station the moment I released her top. She was suddenly no longer afraid. No, in all of this, she was now the victim. Really, you were going to hit me? As I turned to leave, she yelled at my back. This is the precise reason I no longer love you. You're not a man at all. She continued to speak, yelling every possible abuse as she followed me down the corridor. After 6 years of marriage, she was attempting to make me the antagonist in this tale. It was very convenient for her to go from shivering in terror to yelling abuse at the man she had just accused of hitting her. I didn't realize she wanted me to strike her until I spoke with my friend later that evening. Do you think that's possible? In order to transform herself from the unfaithful wife into the mistreated husband, she wanted me to lose my cool and give her something she could use against me. She most likely had it all figured out. She would cry about her violent husband, run to the police with a battered face, and take half of my belongings and my monthly alimony payments. I was being lured into domestic violence by the same woman who used to bring me soup when I was ill. In a weird way, the manipulation was almost impressive. I needed to leave that house. It practically smelled of treachery throughout the entire area. In our bedroom, on our linens, and in the air, their colognes and fragrances were blended together. The aroma of another guy had contaminated the same bed where I had comforted her during panic attacks. I took my keys and money and went for a drive. I found myself at my friend Mark's house. I'm grateful for Mark. After glancing at my face, he pulled out the whiskey. Mark understood precisely what I was getting into because he had already been divorced. He said it like it was. I had to get a lawyer as soon as possible. Here's the worst part though. Carolyn was working part-time at a boutique, essentially pretending to have a profession, while I was earning 6 figures. That meant I might have to pay this dishonest woman alimony in my state. Every month the same lady who had just slept with another man might deplete my finances. That's the weird thing about the legal system, even if you are the one who is cheated on, you still have to pay for it. However, Mark, being the astute jerk that he is, pointed out that adultery might alter the alimony figures. Keep a record of everything, he advised. Every email, text message, and receipt. Anything that would show she was cheating on you. In this program, there is finally some good news. Perhaps I won't have to pay for her affair partner's dates after all. My mind was still racing. I had been a contented husband and father organizing a surprise for my wife just that morning. I was now sitting in my friend's living room, searching for divorce attorneys on Google while attempting to keep my stomach from turning up whenever I thought about what I had just entered. I had no intention of attempting to mend our relationship in any way. I could be foolish enough to purchase pricey flowers for a wife who cheats, but I'm not foolish enough to overlook it. My phone started exploding when I was sitting at Mark's apartment, trying to take it all in. Carolyn allegedly made the decision to try to tear me down via text messaging because she couldn't control me in person. And holy, the things this woman sent me are unbelievable. Just last week, this woman texted me "I love you," with adorable little heart emojis. She was now providing me in-depth analyses that contrasted her affair partner's manhood with mine. In fact, She took the effort to explicitly describe in writing how much more effective he was in bed than I was. How I could never please her the way he could. How she had spent years pretending to be with me. Like she was writing a Yelp review for a lousy restaurant. She gave me an entire stinking novel detailing all of my sexual shortcomings, along with performance assessments and size measurements. After I caught her cheating in our own bed, she even had the audacity to tell me that her boyfriend had ruined her for other men, as if I would want her back. The best thing though. She was furious that I had destroyed her good thing. Do you think that's possible? As if I should have given them solitude or something, she was upset with me for interfering with her affair. She accused me of being selfish since I had ruined her chance at true happiness by returning home early without telling her. This woman was performing mental acrobatics that would have pleased Olympic judges. I'm glad Mark was there because he told me right away to take screenshots of everything. He kept shouting, "Document, document, document." And he was absolutely correct. I saw those tiny message bubbles begin to go away, one by one, not even a minute after she had finished her big tirade about her fantastic affair partner and my alleged flaws. I suppose she finally understood that when your husband earns 3 times as much as you do and a divorce is imminent, it might not be the best idea to write down your admission of infidelity. She resorted to using the same old slurs after erasing all the proof of her affair. She called me all the names in the book, but she made sure to keep her afternoon actions out of the conversation. The speed at which she shifted from boasting about her affair to acting as though it never happened was actually rather astounding. It was like witnessing someone attempt to remove evidence from a murder scene as those texts vanished in real time. Unfortunately, she was unaware that I had screenshots of every single item. She may have erased the texts, but she was unable to erase the truth or the images of them that were now securely saved in the camera roll of my phone, ready to prove to a divorce judge why I shouldn't be required to pay this lady any alimony at all. That evening, Mark proved to be a wealth of information regarding divorce. He guided me through every step I needed to take, from gathering proof to protecting my financial accounts, in between shots of whiskey. That night, I hardly slept at all, just mentally reliving everything while I browsed through my phone's evaluations of divorce attorneys. The 2 weeks that followed were a haze of meetings with various lawyers. Some appeared to have barely passed the legal exam, while others sought retainers that were more expensive than my automobile. Finally, I came across Lucas, who didn't need me to sell a kidney to pay him and who seemed to genuinely care about my issue. Lucas really grinned when I showed him the screenshots of Carolyn's texting tantrum and the photos of the condition of our bedroom. Although he was pragmatic, he acknowledged that we had a strong case to reduce or possibly do away with alimony. He cautioned me that regardless of the reason for the dissolution of the marriage, judges in our state have a tendency to favor the lower-earning spouse. Nevertheless, he pledged to fight for me until the death. To be honest, the first positive development since this horror began was simply having someone knowledgeable and supportive in my corner. Serving Carolyn with divorce papers was the exciting part that followed. Are you curious about what this woman did? For 3 weeks, she avoided the server by altering her schedule, acting as though she wasn't home, and even having her mother inform the server that she had relocated to Florida. She had likely not exercised honestly for months when the server finally caught her leaving a yoga session. She took the entire 30 days permitted by law to reply, even at that point. A move of pure hatred. She was aware that I was paying Lucas by the hour, so she knew precisely what she was doing, dragging everything out as long as possible. And Carolyn became the queen of petty once the proceedings really got underway. She claimed she couldn't locate bank statements that I knew she had, forgot to bring necessary paperwork to meetings, was late for every appointment and insisted on thorough inventory of every item in the house, down to the last spoon. These absurd settlement offers kept coming in from her lawyer. In addition to wanting my 401k in the house, she also wanted alimony. This woman, whom I found cheating on, asked for half of my retirement funds, which was really outrageous. The most annoying aspect? She was still seeing her affair partner, and we had been apart for months by this time. Yes, mutual friends told me about that. She is trying to make my life as unpleasant as possible while living her best life. She would abruptly alter her mind or make new demands whenever we were on the verge of reaching an agreement. She seemed to take sick joy in seeing me squander money on legal bills. I could almost hear her giggling all the way to her boyfriend's bedroom whenever Lucas had to answer one of her absurd proposals. I attempted to re-enter the dating scene while Carolyn was working tirelessly to prolong the divorce and deplete my finances. I went through a phase of hooking up with random women from dating apps, which isn't my proudest moment. Downloaded Bumble, Tinder, and other apps. I tried to persuade myself that this was what it meant to move on by having a few one-night stands. However, each subsequent morning felt worse than the one before. Every pointless hookup served as a reminder to me of why I had declined Carolyn's proposal of an open relationship. That way of life simply wasn't for me. I've always been the kind of guy who wants to have a genuine connection, exchange inside jokes, and wake up next to the same person every morning. I felt empty inside from the whole casual sex situation, as if I were attempting to fill a hole with the wrong form. Other than job, divorce paperwork, and failed hookups, I needed something to keep my mind busy. I used to read a lot, like stay up all night to complete a book, until Carolyn came along and life became hectic with 60-hour work weeks and monthly shouting bouts. I therefore chose to go to this small independent bookstore downtown one Saturday rather than browsing through dating apps or monitoring the emails of my lawyer. Cats napping in the windows, creaking wooden floorboards, and that wonderful old book smell. You know the kind. I felt totally disoriented as I stood in the sci-fi area because, obviously, the entire genre had changed while I was occupied with preserving my marriage. I'm referring to these big novels, series that were maybe 15 books long, and titles that I couldn't even pronounce. This woman next to me actually laughed. Not in a nasty way, just this gentle, delighted sound, which must have made me appear very pitiful, just staring at the shelves with this perplexed expression on my face. When I turned to face her, she simply smiled and asked if I needed assistance while holding this enormous book that might have been used as a weapon. I told her that I didn't know where to begin, but I was searching for some decent science fiction. The next thing I knew, she was teaching me the basics of contemporary science fiction while we sat in these comfortable seats in the corner. She was also quite enthusiastic about it. When she talked about her favorite novels, her eyes glowed, and she had the cute habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when she was thrilled about a series. A brief book recommendation evolved into a 2-hour discussion covering everything from contemporary space operas to classic Asimov. I told her about my old college faves, and she told me about a parallel universe series she enjoyed. For the first time in months, I had a meaningful conversation free of attorneys, divorce documents, and awkward Tinder pickup lines. I forgot all about Carolyn and the turmoil for those 2 hours. I was just a man discussing books with a stunning woman who genuinely seemed to be listening. I eventually plucked up the confidence to ask for her number after our spontaneous book club meeting. Something about her made me feel like a youngster again. Even though my hands were shaking as I put it in my phone. Pretty pitiful for a 36-year-old man. With her number, her recommendation for the 3 body problem and the first sincere smile I'd felt in months, I left that bookstore. It struck me how different our text exchange that evening seemed from all those pointless Tinder texts as I continued reading it again. Something genuine was there. I knew I had to disclose my ongoing divorce to her on our first actual date. I had mentally practiced this exchange a dozen times, anticipating her to flee when I brought up my insane soon-to-be ex-wife. However, Emma, yes, that is her name, simply took a drink of her wine and replied, "Thank you for being honest. At least you are addressing your baggage, which we all have." As simple as that. No criticism, strange glances, or awkward attempts to divert the conversation. She also made the joke that she wouldn't have to question whether a man she was dating was secretly married if he was going through a divorce. Emma was just the opposite of Carolyn. Emma would explain things gently during conflicts, while Carolyn would yell. Emma freely gave Carolyn the attention she demanded. She showed genuine interest in my work, recalled little details about topics I had brought up weeks prior, and never once made me feel guilty about going through a divorce. I felt heard and seen for the first time in years. The finest aspect. When we first met, I wasn't even trying to find her. In a bookstore, 2 people connected over science fiction without the use of dating apps or friend hookups. This stuff cannot be made up. After 5 months of dating Emma, I was completely smitten. She made me feel comfortable in every way, including sending me book recommendations while I was at work, leaving little notes in the books she lent me, and paying attention when I shared my day. However, Carolyn continued to put up obstacle after obstacle in the divorce process. She would always come up with a new way to drag things out whenever I thought we were almost done. Missing signatures, contested assets, suddenly remembered joint accounts. You name it, she tried everything. Emma was quite patient during this entire ordeal. She never complained about being with a technically married man or put pressure on me regarding the divorce. She would simply support me during the annoying phone conversations with Lucas and reassure me that this would also pass. I was at last beginning to feel content once more, not content to merely act that way. Naturally, everything went totally haywire at that same moment. I had just spent a wonderful Saturday with Emma. After shopping and eating lunch at this adorable tiny cafe, we were returning to her car in the mall parking lot. We were discussing what movie to watch that evening as the sun was going down. I'm listening to her giggle about something one moment and then everything in my life erupts into pandemonium. This engine screamed like if someone had stepped on the throttle pedal, and I heard it before I saw it. As I turned to face the sound, I saw that this car was speeding directly at us, primarily toward Emma. I grabbed her arm out of pure impulse to pull her away, but I wasn't quick enough. Her leg was clipped by the automobile, and I watched in horror as it simply broke. I will never be able to forget the sound of her bone cracking and her scream. I tried to protect her body with mine as I slid down with her when she fell onto the pavement. I was about to dial 911 when I heard the tires squealing once more. The car's engine was still roaring as it backed up after colliding with another car. It dawned on me then that this was no accident. This driver was attempting to strike us once more. Emma's leg was bent at this terrible angle and she was crying in agony. I knew that if I didn't move her, we would both die. With my pulse racing so fiercely I felt it could burst, I grabbed her by the arms and pulled her between two parked cars. Every time she moved, she cried out in agony, but I had to continue. The car slammed into the cars we were hiding between as it charged forward once more. Every auto alarm in the area was activated by the crash's extreme violence. At this moment, people were yelling and racing toward us from all directions with their phones out. The entire parking lot was in disarray, with people shouting, car alarms going off, and Emma sobbing beside me. I swear to God that time stopped as the driver's door opened. Carolyn was there, getting out of the car as if she were going to a dinner party. She appeared just like she had when I last saw her at our lawyer's office, but now she had a crazy expression in her eyes that I had never seen before. With her hair styled flawlessly as usual and wearing the same blazer she used to wear to work, she appeared as though she hadn't just attempted to kill two people in broad daylight. It was made much more horrifying by the stark contrast between her normal appearance and what she had just done. This was my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had reportedly been monitoring us and decided that if she couldn't have me, she'd rather see me dead. This wasn't just some drunk driver or random road rage incident. She intentionally targeted Emma, who had never done anything but make me happy again, in her attempt to kill me. Something shattered inside of me when I heard Emma's whimpers of anguish and looked at her fractured leg. She had recently attempted to murder an innocent lady whose only crime was dating her soon-to-be ex-husband. So this was no longer just about Carolyn and me. Fearful that Carolyn might have a weapon or try to complete what she started, I kept one eye on her while holding Emma close to keep her calm. It was like watching someone change into a monster in front of me when Carolyn got out of that car. I hadn't been married to this woman for 6 years. Even the woman I had caught cheating in our bed wasn't this one. This was something very different, a furious being posing as my ex-wife. I was hit hard by the reality of what had just transpired. In fact, Carolyn had made a deliberate, planned attempt to kill us, not in a moment of rage. She must have followed us, waited for the perfect opportunity, and then made a conscious attempt to run us down in the middle of the day. I honestly believed she was going to try to complete what the car hadn't been able to achieve when she began to approach us, her heels clicking on the pavement like some kind of twisted countdown. Except for her eyes, which were blazing with a fierce hatred I had never witnessed, not even during our most heated arguments, her face was utterly blank. Thankfully, she was seized by a man who looked like a linebacker before she could get to us. Like some furious animal straining against a leash, she continued to try to push forward even after that. While I was attempting to calm Emma and examine her wounds, I couldn't take my eyes off Carolyn. This lady had slept next to me for 6 years, sat across from me at innumerable dinners, and discussed starting a family with me. Now she was here, having just attempted to kill my girlfriend and me in a mall parking lot. My head was spinning from the difference between those two versions of her. When someone you once loved enough to marry tries to kill you, how do you handle it? An ambulance arrived after the police, who were siren blaring. Emma was in excruciating pain as they loaded her into it, but she made an effort to grin at me to reassure me that she was all right. While the officers were handcuffing her, Carolyn lost all mental faculties. "It's only been a year, and you're already walking around with that asterisk, she screamed at the top of her lungs. Everyone around us recoiled at the sheer vitriol in her voice. In front of dozens of witnesses, she had just tried murder, and in her deranged mind, she somehow was the victim. That's when I realized how completely insane it all was. I genuinely walked in on this woman cheating on me in our bed with a male stranger. She was the one who violated our marriage vows, accused me of being the one who caught her, and, out of spite, prolonged our divorce. She is currently being detained for attempted murder while yelling about betrayal. Olympic-level mental gymnastics were displayed. She was acting as though I was the terrible guy for moving on after she ruined our marriage by infidelity. I felt as though I was in a distorted parallel universe as I stood there in that crowded parking lot, witnessing my ex-wife being crammed into the back of a police car while still yelling profanities and having my girlfriend's blood on my hands from where I attempted to assist her. My wife, who used to make me breakfast on Sundays and send me adorable texts while I was at work, recently attempted to kill 2 people in cold blood. What's the most absurd aspect? She really seemed to think she had a right to do it, as though I was the bad guy in this tale because I caught her cheating. I kept expecting Emma to tell me it was over every time I went to see her in the hospital. Who could blame her after all? His insane soon-to-be ex-wife wants to use her as a hood ornament 5 months after they started dating. Most individuals don't sign up for that kind of baggage. Because she had the misfortune of dating me, she had to endure months of physical treatment and had her leg in this enormous cast. When I informed her who the driver was, I was unable to look her in the eye. Instead, I just gazed at the hospital floor, waiting for the inevitable, "I can't do this anymore" reaction. "Well, at least we know she'll have plenty of time to work on her road rage in prison," Emma replied, just reaching for my hand. In fact, she joked about it. This woman was attempting to comfort me while she lay in a hospital bed with pins in her leg due to my ex-wife's attempted murder. She gave me a weird look when I asked her if she was certain she wanted to stay with me after everything. "Do you really believe that I will allow her to win? I'm going to walk again absolutely fine, and she's going to prison. I think I'm going to win this one." The office of the district attorney was obsessed with this case. It turns out that the entire event was captured in stunning high definition by many security cameras. The video was terrifying. Carolyn's automobile was the first to circle the parking lot, resembling a shark searching for food. She then parked and watched us for a bit. This, according to the DA, was important because it demonstrated premeditation. She didn't simply chance to see us and lose it. Instead, she tracked us, waited for the right opportunity, and made a conscious attempt to kill Emma. Before she shot it directly at us, they had video of her passing by our area at least 3 times. The security footage resembled a scene from a horror film. You could see how she waited until we were in the ideal position and then simply floored it as soon as she saw us. The first blow that shattered Emma's leg, Carolyn backing up for another attempt, and me pulling Emma between the cars were all captured on camera. According to the DA, it was one of the most obvious attempted murder cases she had ever seen. There is no place for justifications of heat of passion or transitory insanity. This was a cold-blooded, well-planned attempted murder that was captured on many cameras from various perspectives. The most bizarre aspect? Before attempting to kill us, she can be seen on the video inspecting her makeup in the rear-view mirror. She is not trying to commit double homicide. Rather, she is merely adjusting her lipstick as if she were going to a business meeting. This, according to the prosecutor, was another nail in her coffin because it demonstrated that she was fully conscious of and in charge of her actions. She wasn't a woman who lost her temper out of jealousy. Rather, she meticulously prepared to kill her ex-husband's new lover and meticulously applied cosmetics for her subsequent mugshot. Because, evidently, plotting to kill your ex's new girlfriend is more important than dividing up the china collection, the entire divorce process was put on hold. For months, I alternated between the courthouse, the hospital where Emma was recovering, and my job. Initially, my supervisor was kind, but I could tell his patience was running thin after I had to leave work for legal reasons 10 times. My ex-wife couldn't tolerate the fact that I moved on after she cheated, so I was living in the courthouse, burning through PTO like crazy, and spending hours with prosecutors. The trial itself was akin to witnessing a master lesson in the art of incarceration. Prosecutors have an ever-increasing mound of evidence. First, there were the security cameras, which showed Carolyn attempting to assassinate Emma from 6 distinct perspectives. The parade of witnesses followed, and it appeared like everyone in the parking lot had stayed to testify. This wasn't an accident, according to the stories of the soccer mom who witnessed the entire incident while carrying groceries, the teenager who captured it all on his phone, and the retired police officer who seized Carolyn before she could complete her task. This was an open-air murder attempt. Even though Emma's leg was still in a cast, she looked amazing on the stand. Without crying, she recounted her experience of seeing the automobile approaching, the agony of her leg breaking, and the fear of knowing Carolyn was returning for another attempt. I also had to testify, telling the jury about the threatening texts, the divorce drama, and how I discovered Carolyn cheating. Carolyn sat there the entire time, wiping tissues at her eyes and attempting to look regretful. The jurors saw through it all. The verdict found it guilty on all counts, including reckless endangerment, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and attempted murder. However, things became frustrating when the 12-year sentence was announced. She only has that. She was sentenced to 12 years for premeditated attempted murder, but if she behaved well, she may be released much sooner. Her entire, "I'm so sorry, I wasn't thinking clearly," charade was bought off by the judge. She sobbed as she described how she lost control and deeply regretted her actions. As I sit there, I consider how she looked at her makeup before attempting to murder us. I was given the following explanation by the prosecutors. First-time offender, no past record, expressed regret, etc. But really? 12 years? She made a cold-blooded attempt to kill 2 people. She planned it, tracked us, and if the bystander hadn't stopped her, she would have tried a 3rd time. Emma might have passed away. I might have perished. Additionally, if Carolyn behaves well in prison, she might be released in less than 10 years. You can try to kill someone in front of dozens of witnesses and still receive a shorter sentence than a man caught using drugs, which is only one of the peculiarities of the legal system. What really grabbed me though? Carolyn actually had the audacity to turn to us during the sentencing process and apologize, stating that she wasn't herself that day, as if there were ever a time when it was acceptable to try to kill people in a parking lot. Emma refused to give her the satisfaction of an answer, instead just staring her down the entire time. Even though 12 years wasn't what we had hoped for, it was at least 12 years without having to peer over our shoulder in parking lots. It's funny how a judge's viewpoint on alimony can be significantly altered by a murder attempt. Following the criminal trial, the divorce process abruptly became quite straightforward. Carolyn, who looked amazing in her orange jumpsuit, had to attend via video link from prison. The judge quickly put an end to her lawyer's attempt to fight for part of my assets. It turns out that judges don't feel too sorry for spouses who attempt to kill their former partner's new companions. The court isn't in the business of rewarding attempted murderers with alimony, the judge actually stated, and I quote this. She received exactly everything she had before the marriage, her personal belongings, her clothing, and her jail commissary account. Her lawyer's expression was priceless as the judge turned down each and every one of their demands. No claim to the house, no alimony, no portion of my 401k, nothing. She ultimately played herself after spending months dragging out the divorce, making absurd requests, and postponing appointments. She may have gotten anything in the divorce if she hadn't tried to make Emma a speed bump. Rather, she received divorce papers that essentially stated, "You get nothing," and a prison cell. However, I was unable to remain in that flat. Too many memories of that guy walking in on her. They were always there when I walked through the bedroom door. Emma and I discovered this fantastic location nearer to the city center. In fact, it's far nicer than my last apartment, has a great view of the city and, most importantly, the bedroom isn't haunted by the ghost of my cheating ex-wife. Emma is now completely recovered. It's hardly noticeable that her leg was ever fractured. She quips that since it permanently got rid of my psychotic ex, getting struck by a car was completely worth it. Dark humor, but whatever gets you through nearly getting killed is better, isn't it? I occasionally question whether I could have prevented all of this. Perhaps when she began picking fights over nothing, I should have recognized the warning signs. When she declined to continue couples therapy, perhaps I should have fled. To be honest though, insanity doesn't always raise a giant red signal. Sometimes it goes unnoticed until it tries to kill your lover in a parking lot. I can say I'm truly happy now, at least. Since we met through science fiction books and are currently living our own wild story with a happy conclusion, Emma and I are discussing getting married next spring. Carolyn will undoubtedly go eventually, but that is the purpose of restraining orders. In addition, Emma's father, who teaches firearms, ensured that we both obtained concealed carry licenses in case Carolyn decided to attempt for a second round after she leaves. Document everything, be on your watch, and maybe stay away from mall parking lots if you're going through a divorce or have strange ex-partners. Additionally, if you're seeing someone new after a divorce, you might want to investigate their background first, or at the very least, make sure they're not the kind of person who would try to kill someone over a split. Reddit, I appreciate you reading my bizarre tale. I'm interested in reading all of your comments, particularly the ones about cars. I guess your ex-wife really drove that relationship into the ground, is Emma's personal favorite. Oh, and I still go to the bookshop with Emma. No, we no longer park in that shopping center. Am I the asshole for getting upset and crying when my boyfriend let his best friend's wife alter the dish I prepared for dinner? Original post, throwaway account, my boyfriend, 28M, and I, 22F, met at work 2 years ago. Technically I was working part-time during undergrad and he was a customer, but after a couple of months, we started going out. I really love this man and nothing has happened on this scale before, so I'm very confused about it. My BF has a very tight group of friends. I am well acquainted with them, and their girlfriends. One of them, Dave, is married to Ellie. Fake names. Ellie is an excellent cook and often hosts dinners, and everyone brings a dessert to those dinners. I am the youngest in the group, so most times they brush off my requests for contributing or bringing in a dessert. However, the last time I asked Dave and Ellie if they wanted anything extra like wine or some sweet dish for dinner, they said I could bring one of those sweet dishes I make for my boyfriend. I'm Indian. And even though I can't cook as well as my mom, and I'm in a different country for studies, I called my mom up and had her teach me properly how to make a specific Bengali sweet which is my favorite. I had my friends taste it and they said it was great. My boyfriend ate some and said it was excellent. Except, last night, I greeted Ellie and kept the dish in the kitchen. When the food was brought out and my boyfriend told everyone I made it, I saw that someone had added cinnamon powder to the sweet. You never have the sweet with cinnamon powder. The dessert tasted like cinnamon and I felt horrible. Though everyone said thank you and it was good, I think my face gave it away, and my boyfriend took me aside and said that Ellie had told him that my sweet looked too white, and thought some cinnamon might bring some color into it. I don't know, I just felt awful and I started to tear up. My boyfriend then defended Ellie and said that his friends already think I'm a child and not make a big deal of this and we will talk about it. I told him Ellie asked him first, couldn't he have told her not to add cinnamon to the sweet? He told me he didn't think it was a big deal and asked me to drop the topic on the way home. I didn't text him goodnight and this morning he said he was sorry and said my crying made him feel like an awful person. I don't know, now I think I overreacted. AITA, some of OOP's comments. To a now deleted comment, thank you. BDW, it was Rosagola. I even had my mom ask our local sweet shop what quantity they used for the sizes of Rosagola. I had managed the sweet to taste a lot like the sweet shop, so that's why I was so upset. If it tasted bad I wouldn't have cried. Commenter, actually you should have asked right at the table why there is cinnamon added to your dessert. Not in a shout complain way to make a scene but to make it clear your dessert was spoiled and your contribution was pretty much sabotaged. Don't cover other people if .ck ups, it's on them, not you. OP. Downvoted. I didn't want to embarrass Ellie or my BF. Plus I didn't know who added the cinnamon during dinner, and I was too upset to even talk. Commenter. So your boyfriend doesn't defend you and apparently all his friends think you're a child. Which he also doesn't defend you against. He's also got 6 years on you, dude's nearing 30. Does your boyfriend often treat you like a child? Does your boyfriend usually defend his friends when they do some fuck shit like this? Does your boyfriend defend you at all? He should feel like an awful person. He is an awful boyfriend. I usually just hang around my boyfriend's friends during these dinners. I admit I feel a little left out because they all have been friends for so long, and I'm from a different culture, but they have never said any outright offensive thing to me. My boyfriend doesn't treat me like a child. He mentioned before that due to my age his friends see me like a much younger sister. So I guess that's why he said it. I don't know, I'm kind of rethinking his words. Commenter. You should really your aunt have a round with your BF in Bengal. We don't have GFs or housewives, we have queens of the house. He needs to understand the Bengali household hierarchy. OOP, there is no way am I going to tell this to my ma. She already has reservations about my BF due to the age gap and the fact that he is not Bengali. But thank you, your comment cracked me up. A lighter comment. I know. I was horrified. And I had to eat it and act like nothing happened, at the dinner table, to not cause a scene. Traumatized by cinnamon rosagola was not on my bingo card this year. Top comment, Vegetable Business 897, BF saying everyone thinks you're a child, and him saying, we'll talk about this later, is him telling you he thinks you're a child. Girl, tell him you're tired of hanging out with judgmental old farts and you're going to go find people younger and cooler to be with. Please don't think this guy hung the moon. Mini update, same post. Update, Ellie saw this post. My boyfriend texted me to see if it was me. I said yes. He said we needed to talk. For safety purposes, my best friend will be here. I don't know, I never expected my post to blow up update post. He said he needed space from the relationship. I think with the way this post blew up and what happened because of a post, I should clear up some things. I never asked if I should leave my boyfriend for this. I asked if this was an overreaction. My crying. But having thousands of people tell me this was racially charged, Ellie wanted power, my BF is shitty, etc. My brain went haywire. BF called yesterday and when I got there, his house, with my best friend, Dave and Ellie were there. Ellie was crying and Dave looked really pissed at me. My BF told me to sit down and Dave started with how I could make a post that most of the people in the dinner party would recognize and know, and could shame Ellie and my BF. My BF was silent and wouldn't even look at me, and was only shaking his head. It felt like I was a kid, being scolded by my parents with my elder sibling disappointed in my actions. That is what I felt and it looked. I admit, it was very spineless of me, But Dave went on for like a minute and I was just looking at my BF waiting for him to defend me. I asked Ellie, why would she alter my dish, after telling me to bring an Indian dish? She said she thought Indian food would be brown. This woman has more Indian friends than me, and she thinks Indian food is brown. She grew up in the UK, FFs. And I felt so defeated. The comments, my friends, and people around me telling me his friends came first to him, not me. He said he didn't think the sweet was a big deal. I told him I would never let my friend alter something he spent 3 days learning, getting people to taste it and got his mom involved in. He saw I put a lot of effort into it, so why let her alter it? Why couldn't he ask me? Ellie started to cry and say that she wasn't being racist and she wouldn't know that I put effort into it and now she couldn't host dinners again. I said I used fake names, so why does it matter, unless she and Dave went around telling people? BF told me he didn't expect this from me. My best friend piped up that he expected that my BF would have a effing spine, so I guess they were both disappointed. My BF told me, in front of Dave and Ellie, that he needs some space. I told him to get lost. I don't know what my best friend said to him after that, considering I left my BF's flat. I kind of tripped in the metro station, so now I'm crying on my best friend's couch with an ice pack while his BF keeps giving me peach schnapps and my relationship has toppled over. I wouldn't have stormed out had he looked at me once. He just looked 100% on Dave and Ellie's side and acted like I was the one with the problem when she caused me hurt. If his friends come first when they cause me hurt, where would I have been if I decided to marry this man? My friends are good to me and are acting like I'm some fragile glass. I even heard my best friend and his brother whispering loudly from the kitchen and his elder brother wanting to threaten him via Insta DMs. I hate that this has come to this, considering I have always been the mom friend to my friend group. I'm drunk while writing this, so have some grace in the comments. Also, if you'll be an incel like those people in my DMs, telling me I'll never keep a man if I'm this dramatic, please go away. I just thought I needed to update. That's it. Thanks guys. Edit. Guys, this is the first time I've faced what y'all have been calling racism. TBH, I didn't see Ellie putting cinnamon into my rosagola as racism. I was just hurt that my days of hard work were ruined, that's it. I understand I need to work on my self-esteem and not let people walk over me. My best friend's elder brother, he's a doctor and is super pissed at my ex-RN, because he didn't know what happened, booked an appointment with a therapist he knows, as he thinks I need mental help to not normalize aggressive behavior. I'm sorry for ranting on Reddit, but I guess that's where I am. Both my best friend and I will be going. He had been there for some time before, and the situation is tense at home because Dada, Bestie's brother, didn't know what was happening and tore my friends a new one for not protesting when Dave said shit to me. I still haven't told him it was over a Reddit post and that I'm writing here. I feel awful and I don't know how to tell my mom she was right. I wish I never went out with him. One of my ex's friends, from the dinner party, asked me if I really left my ex over a dessert, so I guess that's what he told people. It hurts, I know it shouldn't, but it hurts. I think it is partially my fault. I shouldn't have let myself be treated like this. There were signs and I ignored them. And now I think I'll never have another relationship because it feels like a horrible, anxious feeling. Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, the older brother, who is a doctor and is taking the time to make sure that your mental health is okay, sounds like he cares more about you than Dave or anyone at the dinner party. OOP, he does. Never doubted that. He is also very mad at me for drinking too much and at his brother for hiding the fact that my ex was an asswipe. I actually am grateful to him and my best friend for being a very strong support system. Commenter, completely unrelated thing. BTW, brown rosagolas exist in India too. They're not as sweet as the white kind, so I prefer the white ones. 3. OOP, I was thinking of making rosagolas. They are brown and tastier, in my opinion. I think maybe if I had made them, this whole mess wouldn't have happened. Commenter, I'm really curious what this dessert is that takes 3 days to make. Drop a link to a recipe. OOP, it does not take 3 days to make. I practiced 3-4 times and because I'm not a professional sweet maker it took me almost 6 hours all 3 days to properly make the kanna, or the correct amount of cardamom to put into the milk for a little cardamom taste. It takes a lot of time and you can find a lot of YouTube videos on rosagolas. Commenter, I say date Dada or the best friend. Dada knows how to treat a woman and he seemed royally pissed at what happened to her. Going as far as to get her therapy. I've had best friends and their family as mine before and I know they've never gone that far to help me. Is it just me or is it a little more than family, to get so angry on her behalf and try to help her mental health? OOP. My best friend is gay and is very much in love with his BF. That's the reason he was in therapy for some time. He has faced homophobia in our home country and needed counseling. And that's why his brother is overprotective of both of us. Where OOP is from for those curious. I'm from West Bengal, but not Kolkata, though I have spent a couple of years of my childhood there. To a different commenter, I am from a district that shares a border with Bangladesh, and both sets of my grandparents were from there. New update post. I'm again grateful for the barrage of supportive messages and chiding I've received from the internet after the cinnamon fiasco and my post causing a breakup. I am updating because I felt like I should just update about recent events, and honestly, after just more than 2 weeks I have started to feel good about myself, even though I feel like shit whenever I remember my ex. I really hope I can put this whole thing to rest and I don't have to update again, for my sanity. Firstly, my ex called a few times last week. I had blocked him earlier, literally like 2 days after breaking up, and whenever he called my friends they wouldn't pick up either. I wanted to handle this matter gracefully. And unlike what some people commented, no, I did not want my issues all over the internet and did not understand what was happening. I just wanted some advice on how to deal with my emotions and didn't want my friends to be mad at my then BF. Thankfully, the trash took itself out. I still don't know if Ellie was racially motivated or if she just hated me. I don't even care now. I don't want a man who makes his friends scold me and humiliate me. I know I deserve to be at least somebody's first choice. Ex came to my best friend's flat. I don't live there, and from what I heard from my bestie's boyfriend, he said he was very sorry and he now felt like I didn't deserve to be treated like that. He had thought, when he broke up with me, that I was overreacting and it was just a small thing I made a big deal out of. But then a few of his friends explained to Ellie that it definitely was a horrible thing to do and told my ex he was a shit BF. Huh. Who knew he had nice friends too? Ex didn't say anything more after that. He was just sorry and he said he doesn't want more hurt between us. I have decided to not contact him. I'm just done. A lecture from my mother on dating idiot men and crying every night for over a week has made me lethargic, and on top, I am fending off Dada, Bestie's elder brothers, insisting that I move in with them for some time because I'm not eating well. My dad said it's okay if I do. My family trusts my bestie and his family a lot. Needless to say, my work and studies are suffering. I haven't heard from Ellie or Dave and I don't intend to. The person who asked me if I left my ex over a desert, I told her what happened and she was appalled. I don't know what she told my ex, for him to apologize. Honestly, I'm so done with that group's shit. I went to one therapy session and I didn't feel good. I know I have to keep going for it to actually help me, but I can't help feeling so down. I have never been so emotionally low in my life and I am officially not dating for the foreseeable future. I am planning a trip with friends after my final semester of my master's and I really hope I don't bring the mood down, for my friends who have been so supportive and have always made me feel I have family, even though I'm away from home. I don't know what I would have done without having my best friend and his boyfriend, who keep telling me to drink the pain away, and Dada keeps on talking about the negative effects of becoming an alcoholic. Overall, I'm closing this chapter, and I don't think I'll need to update again. I'm not ever talking again to Dave and Ellie or my ex, so I don't expect any more drama. I just want to settle down to work and graduate properly. OOP clarifies. Oh my god. I have not started drinking, guys. I rarely drink and just cry. The alcohol thing was a joke.